my camera off though if I'm not looking in the app.
You don't have to. Yeah, you're
Like right now, you can't see my camera,
no,
right?
No.
Yeah.
I cannot. Your face is not visible currently. So, I mean, however works best for you. I think people would prefer to see you on camera, and I can just read the chat. I just mean, like, by the way, we're already live. But, yeah. No, it's fine. What I was going to say, though, is that I may have to pull up some articles, so I'll just be like, hey, Brandon, talk for a while I search. But anyways, hello. Welcome, everyone. This is the Andres Restart podcast that we do every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That is the current time we've been doing and rolling with for a while. And this time, we're going to be talking about Nintendo, as we usually do, because it's a Nintendo YouTube channel. But in particular, we're going to be talking about Nintendo's recent financials. We're going to be talking about some numbers that have surfaced from there, some statements that have surfaced from there. We're also going to be talking about another statement or answer to a question regarding Twilight Princess HD from the developer of said HD port to the Wii U, Tantalus. So we're talking about that because apparently they have no idea about any Twilight Princess HD. That's the basic plan tonight. We're going to be talking. I mean, it's so maybe the way I said all of that may have not have seemed like a lot, but it depends. But it is a lot, just to be totally clear, right? Like the Tantalus statement about Twilight Princess HD, that's its own beast, which we're gonna be getting into. But then the Nintendo financials and the numbers he's seen from there, and certain statements that have come out from there or been translated from there, that also is its own beast as well. There's next gen implications, there's current gen implications, so we're gonna be talking about all of that today. And if you don't know this other lovely fellow over here, his name is Brandon. He is my friend. He's been the co-host for the channel for quite a few years already. So, you know, that's him. He's there, and he's pretty cool.
Am.
Exactly.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. So, something that I'm doing this time, which Brandon does not know about, not really a big deal, don't worry, is I'm gonna do a shout out. I don't normally do shout outs. Maybe it could be more of a thing moving forward, where I do kind of like just like at the beginning of the show, I just talk about something, like some sort of shout out for something. It'll be linked in the description below. And it's not even related to the channel. So this time I'm shouting out technically my cousin, but he was like, hey, so like talk about my new rap song. So he's like trying to be an up and coming rapper, and he actually put out a single recently, and he has a producer and all, and I think it's pretty good.
Oh, wow.
I don't normally listen to rap. Not saying I don't like rap, I don't normally listen to it, but
Yeah.
you know, you might hear this song, you'll be like, oh, this is something I would hear on the radio or at a bar or something. Like I actually think it's pretty good. So if you're into rap, or if you're just curious about what some of my biology is capable of, because we are related, check it out. I think it's pretty cool. So it is linked in the description below. The song is called No Sleep.
Yeah.
So for sure, check it out. But let me check in with the chat here. We'll talk about some things, and then I'll have Brandon talk for a little bit while I scramble to find sources, and then we'll jump into it. So, yeah. Basically, as usual, because I finish work relatively late into the day, the amount of time I have between work and the show time is limited for me. So there's a couple things that just don't happen right when I want them to. So yeah, but the show is here. We are almost on time, so it'll work out.
Close enough.
Yeah, I tried to get Ruby, my new baby cat, in the room where she normally belongs, but she didn't feel like coming up this time. So she's probably at the door like, hey, why'd you lock me out? Why'd you lock me out? Like, you took too long. It was showtime. I didn't want to leave the door open because audio reasons. So, yeah. You know, I may let her in at some point. But anyway, let's check on the chat here. Clinton McKinney, hello there. How are you? Sinker, hello. The Megaton Menace, how you doing? So you added me and said, how much do you think Kirby and Forgotten Land will sell in total? Like lifetime?
Honestly, I don't know the sales numbers yet for that game currently, so I can't really make a prediction.
Surprise, they're pretty good. Pretty good.
I imagine they're pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
I'd imagine 3 to 5 million.
I mean, keep in mind, Kirby came out in March. So the report isn't going to talk about now. It's going to talk about what happened because it cuts off at the end of March. So basically, we only have the numbers for a few weeks. First
like 2-3 weeks, yeah.
Right. But I will tell you, it's not that far from what you said.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Little tease right there. I just didn't pull up the numbers beforehand, so that's why I'm like scrambling now. I'll get to it in a little bit. I'll wait till Brandon can do a tangent for me.
I'm just trying to think of what I'm gonna tangent on.
Yeah, so we will touch on more on the specific sales for certain games, but I will tell you, with the incredibly strong start of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that it's going to be the best-selling Kirby game of all time. I do anticipate it at least exceeding 5 million copies sold.
Okay.
Because it's like I'm gonna pull up the numbers in a moment, but I want to say that it's not too short of already half of that. Okay. So given that it did that in just a few weeks, that's pretty damn impressive. Now, the other argument that should be made, though, is that oftentimes the strongest sales for a game happen right in the beginning. Which is actually proving to be the story for Metroid Dread. Now, will it have legs and continue to sell, a little bit moving forward? We'll see. But Metroid Dread has yet to break 3 million copies sold. That's another thing we're going to be talking about today because it's part of the financials. However, even though it is yet to break 3 million, it's right there. It's at the doorstep. It's at 2.9, which is a mere 100,000 copies away. I could sell that in a lemonade stand over a couple weeks. Not
Probably
true,
has
but
3 million by now.
Maybe.
Sure.
Maybe. We assumed that, but from December, I mean, they only sold like 150,000, like 3 months after the holidays. Well, maybe those numbers are a little skewed because
sales
of
are pretty low right after the holidays.
Yeah. I do think by the time the year is over, it will have exceeded 3 million. Will it hit 4 million, though? We'll see. Point is, though, even at 2.9, Metroid Dread is the best-selling Metroid game ever. So, still great. Still great, for sure. And again, I will pull up the specific numbers in a little bit. Let's see, I'm just kind of going through the chat here. Kyle Linquist. Is it going to be on the Legends of the Wind Waker HD Switch? I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you suggesting?
I think they are asking if Wind Waker HD will come to the Switch because of the Twilight Princess HD topic. They're wondering maybe if this affects that as well.
So it's an interesting consideration, right? Because I think a lot of people doubt that we could see both come together. I'm not necessarily on that train. I mean, I understand the argument. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Like it's within the realm of possibility. Then Nintendo still treats them as individual releases. So it may be the case that they do release them individually, but I don't think they'll sell them at full price. I think they'll probably sell at a discounted price, maybe $50 or $40. Maybe it does come out on its own. Wind Waker HD comes out this year. Breath of the Wild 2 comes out next year, and they save Twilight Princess until another year where they don't really have much. I could see that.
They can do that.
Yeah. Of course, by the time that would happen, I think we'll be definitely in the Switch 2 era by that point. Well, I mean, probably. I don't know. I mean, maybe 2024. There isn't a Switch 2 yet, which we'll be talking about today. So that there's layers to all of this. It's all related, which is intertwined, and there's a lot.
I'm holding back my answers right now because I know if I say the things I want to say, we're gonna get into a tangent.
Yeah, but that would be a golden opportunity for me. I'm waiting for said tangent.
I want you to be discussion with the tangent.
Okay. Let's see here. the Megaton Menace. 2.5 million sales in a week is very impressive. I think that it will break 4.5, but I also know that the first week is usually the best, so it's not guaranteed. I mean, it's pretty much what we sort of talked about. I think you're spot on there. I do feel like when you're already at 2.5 with just a short amount of time. Yeah, it came out towards the end of the month, not even the beginning of the month. So to your point, like, not even a few weeks, a week or so, right? So, like, that's incredibly impressive. That is a very, very strong start. When you're already halfway to 5 million after, well, I don't know, a weekish, like, that's really good. So, yeah, definitely.
What day did it come out? Like the 26th?
Let's fact check.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land. March 25th, 2022. So I think it was out for like 6 days or something. Not even a week.
I think March
not
had
even a
31
week.
days.
Not even a week.
So
6 days.
Yep.
The 25th, the 26th, the 20. I mean, 7 days. So yeah, a week. Crazy. That's crazy.
You're right. 6 days.
That's crazy. Well, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st. 7 days.
Okay.
But it's because the thing is, the day that's literally a week after.
Right. You gotta count the day.
Yeah.
It comes out on this one.
Yeah. Because you can buy the game at midnight Thursday, or you know, a minute after 11:59 Thursday. So you get my point. Yeah. Josh Cohen, can you call me Anders?
Probably won't remember that, bro. Change your username, maybe.
You.
I'm gonna tell you.
I mean, I'm not gonna.
There's a lot of people on this channel.
Am I gonna say that I particularly like the name Anders? No, I don't. But am I gonna stop you from saying it? And am I gonna feel incredibly insulted if you say it? No. But please, don't make that a thing. There's so many other nicknames I would much rather have. So, yeah, don't do that.
I'll call you Anders.
I'll pull your hair
I
out.
thought he wanted to be called Anders, and I'm like, bro, why don't you just change your username if you want us to call you something
yeah,
different?
I see where you're coming from now. Now what you said before makes a little bit more sense. Yes, having Hope 5. Happy Chat Monday. Absolutely. Hello there, game walkthroughs. Hello there, Wario's cousin. Natsu, howdy. Nintendo, hello there. Rel, how's it going? Paul Dunn, what is up? I'm doing alright. People are feeling the hair, Brandon. I think you're doing that cold shower thing. I think there might be something to that.
Yeah. I went to my parents' place on Saturday. Like, everybody was like telling me how nice my hair looked. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh, people appreciate it.
I
put in the work.
Scalding. I take scalding, burning showers.
Well, I have one of those showers where you can remove the shower head, so I only have to use the cold water on my hair, and then I can use warmer water on my body. And it's better.
I've heard there's a lot of health benefits from using obviously clean water, but cold water. Yeah. But I just don't have the strength to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done it, but I don't like it. Spoiled and pampered. Joycey J, you work 10 to 12 hour days. You get it. Thank you for understanding.
I worked a 10-hour day Sunday.
That's lots
I don't have
of
to
hours.
work 12-hour days though. That's nice.
Yeah, I don't like working long hours necessarily, but you know.
It depends.
Yeah. The video that's getting shouted out in the description below is actually my cousin, and it's a single he dropped. So I think it's pretty cool. So if you guys are into rap, definitely check it out. And yes, we're related because he is my cousin. Niche Quick Pops. Sup? Gears of War Phoenix Edition. I think Twilight Princess and Wind Waker will just simply be released on an NSO GameCube expansion, like what they did for Ocarina of Time with the N64 expansion.
I mean, when GameCube eventually comes to Nintendo Switch Online, if it ever does, I would imagine those games would be available, but I do think that they want to eventually bring over those HD ports as well. I don't see why they wouldn't.
I mean,
they're there.
The HD ports would come. The HD
pretty
ports
much
would come
just
first.
better versions in every way.
The HD
the
ports
HD
would
version
come
I think
first.
would come first for sure.
But I mean, I think we're probably a few years away before GameCube, to be frank.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the best case scenario in terms of like seeing GameCube on Nintendo Switch Online is if it's like something that they add to bring people over to Nintendo Switch 2 very quickly. So maybe that's kind of like one of the things they tout as like an advantage on being like the Switch 2.
Maybe.
I'd love to be wrong on this, but I just don't see them adding GameCube anytime soon. I want there to be GameCube. You know, like I think there's actually tons of potential for them to add GameCube, Wii, Dreamcast, Saturn. Like, there's a lot of other older platforms they can add that would be incredible. Now, the problem with GameCube, though, is that GameCube did have analog triggers. Switch does not have analog triggers. So they would have to have like some sort of dedicated solution for that. The problem is that every game is kind of different.
Yeah, you need to go in and change how it works for each game, which it wouldn't be a lot of work, but it's more work than you would need to do normally. So
yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at it like this, like if it can be done on a Dolphin, well, and the thing is, if you use like a Dolphin emulator, you probably would just play with like an Xbox or a PlayStation controller that have an analog trigger.
Yeah. That's what I would do. That's what I did, yeah.
But there are other ways. I haven't done it in a long time, but I would imagine that you can do it with mouse and keyboard too. I think you still can play mouse and keyboard. I mean,
technically you can, but
the only point I'm making here is that if you are able to customize the controls, you can make it work, right? Like maybe in order to get
it can be done.
The full, if you want to get the full press of an analog trigger, maybe you have to press 2 buttons or something like that. It'll be kind of wonky. It wouldn't be very intuitive. But people may argue that N64 is already not intuitive on Switch with how the control is laid out. Yeah. So, you know.
And I'm sure they'll have a wireless GameCube controller you can buy, just like the SNES and NES and N64.
So my question to you, though, and I don't know this because I never actually bought these Smash GameCube controllers, but were they full analog triggers as well?
Yeah. They worked exactly like
they came with the actual cable.
Yes.
You need an actual adapter for it to work.
Yeah, you need the adapter for that. So I imagine it would be just like that, but wireless.
And those game controllers, I think they can in theory work on the Switch, but you have to plug in the adapter via USB to the Switch dock.
Yes, that adapter still does work. You can use it for Smash.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
So that's also something they already have, but they're not really making any more of those, I don't think. So I do think they'll still come up with a wireless variant.
Oh, that
is also a solution.
Which again, I think you and I both agree is probably a few years away.
Yes, I think GameCube and Game Boy and Game Boy Advance will probably come first.
Yeah. Yeah. And we may not even see Game Boy Advance this year. That may not happen until next year.
No.
Like if we assume Nintendo follows the pattern of when they add platforms, they don't add it every year. So, you know, there's that to consider.
They also got plenty of DLCs they're adding, and they got the Mario Kart DLC that's going to be going on for...
And not to mention, they also have the option of just straight up adding new games. Like, they could, something to the effect of Tetris 99. Like, they could do something like that. They're having smaller eShop releases. Like, imagine if they had another Snipper Clips. Like, that could be something that they add.
I like Snipper Clips.
Right? But, like, you could still buy it on the eShop if you want individually. But if you're a Nintendo Switch Online member, the Plus member, the expansion pack member, you would get that game for free. Something like that. Like, I think that is in the future, potentially.
There is supposed to be, like, another 1-2 Switch type game in development.
Yeah, it's called Switch Sports.
No, not that one, though.
You're talking about a rumor, or are you talking about, like, a real thing?
I think a rumor.
I believe that rumor was for Switch Sports.
That would make sense.
Yes.
That wasn't what I thought it was going to be, though.
Yeah, well, that's how rumors work.
The way that they did, that's not really how a 1-2 Switch-like game. I feel like that was very deceiving.
Well, I mean, it's all based on perspective, right? Like you could say 1-2 Switch is basically the Wii Sports of Switch, but a terrible version of it.
It's
And
more like
then we got the sequel to Wii Sports
Switch
and Wii Sports
Play.
Resort and Switch Sports.
It's the Wii Play of the Switch. It's not the Wii Sports of the Switch.
And that was also not received amazingly well. Yeah. No, it was not. Moving on though. Continue on the chat here. Battery Yagami. I don't think that Twilight Princess is coming this year. You don't think it will come this year because it will be overshadowed by Breath of the Wild 2 next year.
But that's next year, not this year.
Yes, but I think there's a point. I do kind of relate to the point though, because it kind of depends on how close they are, right? Because if spring 2023 does mean March, which I do think is a good chance that they mean March for Breath of the Wild 2, that means it's early next year. And we are already approaching June and it has not been announced yet, right? So if we're seeing Twilight Princess HD and or Wind Waker HD, those would presumably come out this year in the second half because we're already approaching the end of May, right? So if that's the case, when they come out in the second half, that's going to there's a gap that it could be 8 months, it could be 4 months, it could be 6 months, and I think if you come out with the game say 2 or 3 months beforehand, that might be a little too soon.
It's a little close, but then again, I mean, Pokemon just did it last year with Brilliant Diamond and Pearl.
And Legends Arceus.
And then Legends Arceus, which both sold incredibly well. And Zelda doesn't have quite the selling power of Pokemon, but, I mean, it's Zelda. It sells incredibly well no matter what.
It's an interesting...
I don't know.
Yeah.
They can drop it in August or September, give it plenty of space, and be good. Honestly, they could drop it in December. They'd probably be fine.
I do remember having played Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. It was like, all right, this is cool. But then once January came around, I was already way done with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Like it was, I beat it in a couple of weeks. Like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And then once Legends Arceus came out, it was its own thing. Like I felt like I had already, even though it was only a couple months, for whatever reason, they just felt like enough of a gap where I was ready for another Pokemon experience. And because Legends Arceus was so new and refreshing in comparison to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, which is just a retread of an old game, just, I guess, prettier, like, there was definitely a significant difference there. So, it felt fresh and new to me. So, I could see, it's similar, because Wind Waker and Twilight Princess would be HD ports, remasters of an old game. Similar to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl being a remake of an old game.
Remasters, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's even older. Well, sort of, but not. Anyway, yeah, so it's similar to those, because repurposed game in some way, a few months later, new game actually comes out. So I understand that concept, and I will say that, well, I feel like it's too soon, and Pokemon is definitely a different beast. If you take a look at 2020 leading into 2021, in September we saw the release for Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which had 3 different Mario games, all remastered, which doesn't sound too different from Nintendo releasing 2 remastered Zelda games together, which were already remastered, only to come out with another Mario game, or in this case Zelda game, about a half year later. Because 3D All-Stars came out September, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which also is a Wii U port, but with new content and some quality of life updates, came out in February. So September to October, October to November, November to December, December to January, January to 5-month window. So
yeah, not that long.
Not that long, and it also wasn't a brand new whole game either. But 3D World plus Bowser's Fury did sell pretty well, as did 3D All-Stars. So I guess, when you look at that, when you look at the Pokemon situation, look at the Mario situation, if they can pull it off, Zelda can probably pull it off too.
I think so.
Yeah. I think that the history shows that. Now, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury and Pokemon Legends Arceus are not nearly as important as Breath of the Wild 2 is.
No.
Now, Legends Arceus could go down as a game that sells better than Breath of the Wild. It's possible. I'm gonna say no, though.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. But it is gonna be one. It's already one of the best-selling games on Switch. So
True.
you know,
I think its lasting selling potential is not.
It's
huge, though. I think it's gonna be overshadowed by
Scarlet
Gen
and Violet.
9. Yeah.
Right, and that's the ultimate point I was trying to get at, is that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be like the premier Zelda experience for years to come, while Legends Arceus is going to be it's arguably not even the premier Pokemon experience, because it's only a part of the Pokemon experience being kind of like a single player adventure, not the multiplayer aspect, and also feeling different. And then they're going to replace with Scarlet and Violet at the end within the same year. So there is that to consider. But basically, the ultimate point is, I think that if they come out with Twilight Princess and or Wind Waker HD, say somewhere between August and October, I think they're fine. But if they wait, they don't wait till November or December. That doesn't happen.
They probably won't. I think they'd be fine if they did, but they probably won't. Interesting
Point. I mean, maybe they could get away with it, but yeah, neither of us think though it'll be that late if it's coming this year. Which we will get to. Game walkthroughs at me. How likely do you think Mario Maker 3 is?
Probably gonna happen, just not anytime soon. I just don't think the second one was received well enough for them to just be like, we need to be making another one right now.
Huh.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we got another one eventually. Especially if they release an actually new 2D Mario line with a new art style and stuff, they'll want to have that. Or they could just do DLC, but then again, like, they could have also done that for, like, Splatoon, and they decided to make a new game anyways, which is surprising, so.
I don't think Mario Maker 3 is likely.
Not anytime soon.
Not literal. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it can never happen again. I think it can absolutely happen again, but yeah, years down the road. However, it kind of depends on how you look at it. Because while I think it would be a little challenging for a straight-up Mario Maker 3 to be done in the near future, I could see a Mario Maker 3D, which could still, in theory, be Mario Maker 3, just with a slightly different name there. And the massive implication is that it's not focused on making sprite-based platform, 2D platform style Mario, but rather 3D platform Mario. And some of you may argue, well, that's kind of a stretch, but then I will counter by saying, have you played Game Builder Garage? I would argue some of the best parts of Game Builder Garage is the tools in place to build platformers, 3D platformers that are very Mario-esque. So imagine if they were to streamline that to be something a little bit more intuitive, because obviously maybe not obvious if you didn't play it, but Game Builder Garage is meant to kind of give you sort of like a working understanding of how game development works. So
teaches you some stuff about basic programming.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a very, very advanced Scratch, if any of you know that programming method.
For those who don't, I do not. But yes, the point is that Game Builder Garage is not like designed like Mario Maker, where it's all the tools are very easily and readily usable to make Mario.
Yeah.
But imagine if they were to take Game Builder Garage, which, by the way, is an adaptation of what they did with the Nintendo Labo. They had a Nintendo Labo-like mini-game or mechanic that played around with that stuff already. And just build on that.
Labo VR Garage, I think.
Yeah. You build on that, and you make a Mario Maker 3D. So I actually think that could happen in the not-so-distant future. So what is not so distant future? Within half a decade.
I think that's a lot of R&D and development. It's going to be challenging. I think the biggest issue isn't making it work. I think Nintendo's biggest concern is it going to be mainstream enough? Are we going to be able to make the controls and everything make sense enough to where anybody can do it easily like you can the 2D version of the game?
I think you can make it easier than Game Builder Garage.
Yeah, they can make it easier.
Yeah, but I guess, but to your point, can they make it
their standards of how easy they think it should be?
And I guess the other thing is that if it's meant to be entirely Mario stuff, right? Like, it needs to actually represent Mario gameplay, right?
Yeah.
Because at least with Mario Maker, all the stages, while there may be some crazy stuff in there, it still is like Mario gameplay mechanics. So
it's very easy to limit things from the 2D nature of it.
It is more. I'm not gonna like say that it's not somewhat more complicated. I think it is, but when you factor in that they seem to already have certain engines in place that would be a good foundation for that, I think that does kind of mitigate the workload somewhat.
I think they're probably at least thinking about it.
Yeah, I feel like it has to at least be a concept. There's no way it's not a concept.
They're thinking about Zelda Maker too. I mean, we saw a little mini dungeon maker in Link's Awakening. I mean, they're thinking about a Zelda Maker.
Yeah. So, there's a possibility there. So maybe Mario Maker 3D, but there is the counter argument, an additional counter argument here. We haven't even seen a brand new 2D Mario in a long time. Like, it's almost like Mario Maker might have been the death of 2D Mario. And I'm not saying that's actually the case. I'm actually anticipating that Nintendo will eventually give us an awesome new 2D Mario. But I think when they did it, they kind of put themselves into a bit of a corner with 2D Mario, because like when you can do so much with Mario Maker, how do you come up with a 2D Mario game that has has enough new variations in gameplay to feel like a new nice concept that they can have a full game on? Because Nintendo is very careful to do that oftentimes, where they don't want to make
something that feels too similar.
Exactly. So that is a potential problem if they go ahead and make a 3D Mario Maker for 3D Mario. Now, I feel like given that there's that extra dimension, there's a lot more that can be done, and there's a lot more flexibility there, but it's just something else that I think is worth noting.
As far as a 2D game, I think there's a lot that they could do pretty easily, because the Mario Maker formula is all based on things from previous Mario games. So obviously they could just make entirely new concepts. There's also a lot of, as much freedom as there is a lot of hard limits on how long your levels can be, how the levels transition from one screen to another, how tall your levels can be, and that just inherently limits a lot of things. Whereas an entirely built from the ground game, there's just so much more they could do with the concept, and being able to make custom actual blocks and things for things would just, obviously there's a ton of stuff you could do. While Mario Maker does offer up a lot of stuff, you're still limited inherently from the old Mario content. There's no way of, say, making a new type of block that acts in a way you want it to. There's no way to do that. So I still think they can make a new game, and having a new art style would be big, because I do think part of the reason they haven't done one in a while is because New Super Mario Bros., while it sells pretty well on the casual side, it's pretty clear that hardcore audience doesn't really like it at all. I think fans have been pretty clear about that, especially with the port of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. That it didn't sell poorly at all. It sold great, but pretty much only people who are buying it were the casual audience, and the hardcore gamers kind of scoffed at it a lot.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see them there. I think they want to do something wholly unique and far away from the new style, the new style, quote unquote.
Yeah, well, I hear you there. We'll have to wait and see. But there's a number of considerations, right? There's a potential new 2D Mario. There's maybe Mario Maker 3D, and then obviously how does that impact maybe 3D Mario, things of that nature. So there's a few different directions they can go with Mario. And I don't think the Mario Maker series is dead. There's just a lot of options.
No, it's not dead. I do think the 2D version of it, at least, will be dormant for a while.
Yeah. Nish Quick Pop is asking, is this a Chrono Trigger song? So there's two songs playing. One of them is related to Donkey Kong Country. I forget which track I'm using, and the other one is Pikmin. So not Chrono Trigger. Okay, I'm gonna just check in on the ats and super chats, just so I can move on with the topics here.
While you read the comment, I'm going to use the bathroom real quick.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
So, the Megaton Menace added me. Before you were super hyped for Switch Sports, but now you're acting like it's lame. What changed? So, firstly, I'll say that I am not acting like it's super lame. I did hear that there's a lack of content, and I actually haven't purchased it yet. So, you know, there was, I guess, a disappointment that it didn't have as much content compared to, say, Wii Sports. So there is, like, that bit of a letdown. But from what I've seen and heard of all of the gameplay, it's still pretty good. And they're going to be adding more content as we continue down the road. So I don't think it's super lame. I just haven't picked it up yet because I have a lot going on. It hasn't been a priority for me. But I don't think it's super lame. I don't think I ever said that. But there have been reviews that have been negative of the game because of its lack of content. And that's fair. That's a valid point to bring up. And again, I haven't played it myself yet, so I can't say with certainty how I feel on it. But I do not actually think it's lame. But if you're wondering why there's been a change in the discussion for it, simply that, well, I wanted to get it. I still will get it. I almost got it this weekend. Just stuff, man, life. But you know, that's pretty much it. I guess maybe reviews, but I still want the game. So
which game?
Switch Sports. There's a question why I now think it's lame, but I don't think it's lame. It's just
I just think it's very meh.
It didn't hit it up. The reception was not amazing.
I think the games are too basic and there's not enough choice in what you can do within them. Like the content is very bare bones.
Yeah, well, I am gonna pick it up because it is $40, so it's not like too much. So I just haven't gotten around to it. Guy you don't know. Nintendo added NES Online in 2018, SNES Online in 2019. It wasn't until 2020, however, when we finally got another platform added. I hope we won't have to wait that long once again. N64 is a dramatic departure. So I think one thing is fair to say. Even if they do a thing where they add something else this year, I don't think they're gonna be in a situation where they're adding a platform every single year. I think most people will agree that that's probably not gonna happen. So even
if we do waited 2 years and added 2 platforms. We didn't get just N64. We also got
Sega Genesis as well. It should not be overlooked.
I imagine 2 years from now we'll get Game Boy and Game Boy Color in advance.
Well, rumors have you believe it's happening this year. So
rumors may.
Yeah, but I think that somehow it'll just be kind of hold back. Josh Cohen added me, have you played Elden Ring? No, I have not played Elden Ring yet.
Not yet.
I will be playing Elden Ring as well. But again, there's just so much I have on my plate. I'm not trying to complain, there's just so much, and where I'm at right now, I don't even have my PlayStation, which is where I planned on playing it. I am gonna pick up my PlayStation in a couple weeks, so you know, starting June, I may be playing Elden Ring. So you know, it's another one of those games that's just on my to-do list. Like, I'll say that my priority, right? If we're talking about my priority, is like no matter what happens, no matter what I'm playing, what I'm doing, I will be playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 within 24 hours of its release. That's nothing stopping me. Okay, well, it's possible something could stop me. You know, God willing, my health maintains. Right? God willing, I don't break my arm playing basketball next time. Because I did sprain it, and I'm still recovering. Yeah. It's been a month. It should have broken. That's how bad the fall was. But anyway, odds are, if there's any game I'm prioritizing this year, without a doubt, it's Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and then after that, it's probably Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, for me, it's Xenoblade 3, and then Hogwarts Legacy.
It looks cool. Yeah.
I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so.
Yeah. Also, Elden Ring, even though I haven't played it yet, it's one of those games where I absolutely will play it. It's like there are some games that like they can miss the boat. Like I'm like, oh, I might get it, I might not. It kind of depends on the moment. Like it's sort of like a fleeting thing. But if enough time passes, I may just kind of overlook it and move on, and maybe they'll have a chance years down the road if I'm bored one day. But Elden Ring is one of those games where like, no, I'm going to play it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yeah. So, you know,
I want to play it on PC, but I need to get a new graphics card. But I'm hoping by the time I actually get a new graphics card, they'll have fixed the PC version, because it stutters a lot the first time you play it. Oh, it's a wreck.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll play it on PS5.
You want me to tell you why I'm a baboon? Because I actually recently purchased Mario Party Superstars instead of Switch Sports. I could have bought Switch Sports, but I was like...
Honestly, probably the better game.
It's just like... I've had various parties of people I've wanted to play Mario Party with. So I'm like, alright, well, this makes sense, so I'm doing it. You know?
Superstars is good, too.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Superstars is awesome. It's a superstar game. So, yeah.
It's got online. So we can play it together once
that is true. It does have online. Yeah. Speaking of online games, Rel's adding me about Mario Strikers. Rel asks, how are you feeling about Mario Strikers? I'm kind of getting annoyed by the hate that's been floating around because the game looks amazing. So, perhaps it's because I haven't like fully dived into every little detail and nuance and conversation about the next Mario Strikers. I think this one's called Mario Strikers Battle League. But I'll tell you,
I think so.
I like what I see. I think the one criticism I have heard is that there's not a lot of characters right off the bat. Firstly...
Daisy seems to be missing, which is the big one.
Yeah, I heard that. Firstly, I'll say, and again, I haven't looked into all the details, so maybe there's something I'm missing here, but how do we know there's not just some secret characters that can be unlocked? Like, did they say, hey, this is the full entire roster, and there's nothing else?
They have not confirmed or denied anything.
Right, so, like, why are people freaking out about Daisy not being in the game? Like, she could just be an unlockable? And even if she's not unlockable, let's say all the characters we've seen are the only characters that will be in the game, which maybe is the case, I don't know. There still probably will be DLC. It might be free, it might be paid, I'm not sure. So, I don't know. I just feel like it's a little premature to judge the
gotta
game.
Be in. Even if Nintendo hadn't planned to have Daisy in up until this point, just the fact that everybody on the internet seems to be asking where Daisy is, they gotta be like, oh god, we fucked up. We gotta put Daisy in as DLC. We gotta plan this right now. We gotta go.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I imagine that even if she isn't in the base game, they have her planned already for DLC. Because, I mean, like, she was a big character in the other games. People really liked her.
Yeah, the way people love Waluigi.
Waluigi's great. I will say that there is a little bit of the charm lost in this one. It seems less gritty and violent than Striker's Charge did. But it still looks really cool, and it's got its own style, so I don't know. I'm not, like, decided either way. We just gotta wait and see for the game to fully release. But I think it's got style, but it's not exactly the Striker's Charge grittiness that people were hoping for.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of that.
I'll wait till we get some more in-depth.
You still punch people into an electric wall and see them like.
Yeah, I mean that's the best thing. I will say though, 3 Houses, 3 Hopes, or whatever it's called. Some of the gameplay I've seen from that has kind of made me think, ooh, that actually looks kind of good. So I don't know. I might bite. Probably not though. I'm thinking I'll probably skip Fire Emblem 3 Hopes. Just not because I don't think it's cool, just because I just don't have time to play 4 games every month. I just don't. So, you know. Moving on though. But just for the record, I do think Mario Strikers Battle League looks pretty good. Like, I'm probably...
That's fine.
There is a very, very high chance I'm getting that. It's unlikely that I will... I'm gonna get the game. Pretty much, yeah. Like, that's probably going to be my June game. Josh Coleman, I'm researching and writing a paper on game development. Listening to you while working is very distracting, but I'm fine with that. Podcast is amazing. Maybe we'll stir some ideas. You know, we'll get the creative juices flowing. Fingers crossed.
I remember when I was young, it was just when I was homeschooled still, but I had to write a paper for something, and I chose to write it on, I think it was the pros and cons of handheld gaming versus console gaming. And this was before the Switch era, so it's still very much separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember I wrote like a 700-word essay on it or something.
Huh. Okay. That's pretty good. So I think we should start talking about sales soon. But this is what I'm gonna do, Brandon, because I'm still pulling up some articles. So Wario's cousin asks, "What's next for Metroid Prime 4?" Go.
What's next for Metroid Prime 4?
You go. While I pull up all the information.
All right. Well, we've had a couple chats about this. I think some of the ideas we came up with was more like acrobatic nature, because in all the 2D, the 2D games, you kind of see a lot more flips and tricks and a lot more spryness going on with Samus. So that's definitely a point. I would like to see maybe some wall running or some kind of parkour elements.
Make her more agile, right? Less like a tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there will be not open world, but more open environments. I think it will still most likely be kind of like room based. I think it should still definitely be room based. I think that's kind of part of what makes Metroid. So I don't think that it should be like a seamless level design. I think the room based system works very well for Metroid, but having bigger rooms, more dynamic rooms, maybe more vertical areas too. There's some vertical areas in Metroid Prime. Maybe there's more in 2 and 3. I haven't played those, but there's not like a ton. So maybe they do more vertical stuff there. They could do some space elements as well. There could be times where you could maybe fly around in space. That'd be cool.
Okay.
Do some space combat for a little bit. I don't know.
Okay.
Bigger bosses would be nice. Some kind of like really large scale bosses.
Yeah, on another level. So that's an interesting point. I realize I've pulled up almost everything, but what's interesting, right, is you look at Metroid Dread, and you see some of the cool moments there, like the Kraid fight. You see how Samus like gets like in the mouth of Kraid. Imagine they were kind of doing that Metroid Prime 4, but it's in real time. And to your point, Brandon, they're really big bosses. So kind of like Shadow of the Colossus style, where you're almost like climbing bosses and like getting in there, blasting them in the face, or blasting off appendages because you're finding the key weak point, but it's like a giant monster, so you do have to kind of like fly around it and get to a certain point.
Yeah, and with Metroid Dread being, finally getting that more scary, more horror-focused Metroid, maybe they'll do some more scary stuff in Metroid Prime too. I would be down for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think with a more modern lighting system, you can do a lot more with the shadows and just playing off of that than you could ever do on the GameCube and Wii.
Yep.
I think it'd be great. Just being able to see like the glow from Samus's armor actually like illuminating the darkness in front of you would be cool. Or like the glow from the blaster shots illuminating the darkness would be epic. It's definitely something I think they're going to lean into.
Yeah,
more atmospheric stuff.
I'm kind of with you on all of that. Make it more atmospheric, bring in more horror elements, make Samus a little bit more agile, give us some really big, awesome cinematic moments that go beyond what we've seen in the Metroid Prime games. If they could even go kind of Shadow of the Colossus style mix, but almost like also integrating like those Dread-like cutscenes with the boss fights, but in first person in real time, like that would just be, it would be epic. It would be so cool. I think think they can pull it off. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a really impressive game. Very impressive.
Excited to see what they do with it.
So we'll come back to the chat. I feel like we've kind of been on the chat for a while, and it's time to actually get into the topics for today. So, Brandon, do you want to go over Nintendo's financials first? Do you want to go into next gen talk that also comes from that, or do you want to talk about the Twilight Princess HD situation?
Let's tackle Twilight Princess HD and then probably go into financials and end with the next gen.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good transition. Okay, so to put it simply, we're screwed. That's a joke. So I'm looking here. There was a podcast. Okay, so all right, so someone who works at Tantalus was asked about Twilight Princess HD for Switch and whether Nintendo has reached out, and this was apparently his response: no. And look, we'd obviously love to do that, but that hasn't been a priority for Nintendo, or at least not in conversations they've had with us. The way it works with our friends over here is we'll jump at any opportunity we can to work with one of their titles. That there's a constant dialogue between our two companies. Often there's a little bit of time that passes between titles, and there might be other ideas that are kicked around. But in the case of Skyward Sword, some time passed and then the email comes, would you be interested in considering bringing Skyward Sword onto Switch? To which the answer is, of course, yes, we would. And then we enter into the conversation with Nintendo around what that might look like, and eventually we get underway. So it's similar in a lot of senses in terms of how Twilight Princess on Wii U came to fruition. So
they didn't do Wind Waker HD, did they?
No.
Okay. That was done internally by Nintendo. Right?
Yes. Correct. So I think what needs to be stated here is that Tantalus already made Twilight Princess HD. So the question then becomes, would they even be approached if they were going to bring Twilight Princess HD to Switch? Because it's a Nintendo product. They don't necessarily have to do that. But one might think, well, if they're going to have to make some adjustments or changes, why wouldn't they go to the ones who made the HD version that has those adjustments and changes that need to be adjusted upon? So what I'm getting at is that, keep in mind, Twilight Princess HD came out on Wii U. Wii U has that second screen. So the UI, the way that works, the way that gamepad touchscreen works, and how there's that gameplay and, you know, what being able to play the game away from the screen, having the map, that all is not something that would just translate seamlessly over to Switch, right? Not to mention that just porting a game from one piece of hardware to another, there is work that needs to be done there. Even if it doesn't seem like there's a lot, there is work that needs to be done there that's more than what your average person would realize. So they definitely need some sort of development team to make that all work on Switch. It may not be a big team, it may be a select few people, and I bet there would have to be some testing.
I wouldn't be surprised if they could just get some small team from Monolith to do it. They already have a team that helps with Zelda projects. Yeah. They could have just had somebody from them do it.
So I will say, I saw this on Twitter. I need to find it though.
Tantalus did Twilight Princess, but they didn't do Wind Waker. And if they are indeed going to be releasing both, even if it's not a double pack, why bring Tantalus in for one game that they didn't even do? And especially just for a port job, whereas Tantalus, their main concern was like the remastering efforts. So, like, they don't really need Tantalus for this. Like half of the game, one of the games they didn't even work on, and the other game they don't need them for. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just were like, we'll use Monolith Soft, or Grezzo can do it, or we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah. It should also be noted that even within this statement here, their first thing they open up with is saying, no, and look, we'd obviously love to do that, but that hasn't been a priority for Nintendo. or at least not in conversations they've had with us. So there's that qualifier there.
Well, I imagine that they just wanted them to worry about Skyward Sword, and they would, not because they did need them to work on Skyward Sword. We don't know when. Obviously, like this year, they were planning to release Breath of the Wild, right? The sequel to Breath of the Wild. So that wasn't their plan to have Wind Waker and Twilight Princess ready. So, as far as it being a priority, in talks with Tantalus, they already had them working on Skyward Sword until just last year, and they didn't even know that they would need it this year. So yeah, there is a lot of reasons why Tantalus wouldn't be approached, just in general.
Yeah. Now, so I saw. Shout out to Nintendo Prime. Our buddy Nintendo Prime. I've been on his show. He's been on my show. He actually added Jeff Grubb on Twitter on this. Now, Jeff Grubb is a video game journalist and who's well respected and has talked about things in the past that have come to fruition. For example, 3D All-Stars, Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And, he has been one of a few credible journalists or industry insiders that have stated that they've heard that Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD are coming. So, Nintendo Prime added him after this recent news of, the CEO of Tantalus saying that they weren't working on Twilight Princess for Switch. So, Jeff Grubb eventually responded to this Twitter thread here, and Jeff Grubb says, Nintendo owns a source code and would not need Tantalus to port its work of just one of the two games in the pack. So
yeah, exactly my point. Yeah.
Right. Now, I am not saying that he 100% knows that it's coming. Because if you watch Jeff Grubb's podcast, right, he believes that if it is happening, it's going to happen this year, and he has heard things. But there's also, sometimes Nintendo may have something, and it may never see the light of day. There's that to consider. The Oral project can change, right? It's possible there could be some misinformation out there. Those are all possibilities. So you have to take this with a grain of salt regardless. But to your point, Brandon, and to Jeff Grubb's point, it's Nintendo's game, right? They don't have to go to Tantalus to get some minor work done for the game so it can be on Switch. They can go to someone else.
Yep.
They didn't go to the Zelda team to make Twilight Princess HD. They went to Tantalus, right? So, it's just kind of they don't have to do it.
Yeah, they have plenty of other teams that can do it, so...
Yeah. So... I don't think this is a complete 100% shot in the chest. This doesn't mean that the hopes of Twilight Princess HD are entirely dashed. I'm not even sure if this even decreases the chances at all, because it does. I'll say that for me, it does diminish my confidence in it happening somewhat, but it's also it's a small amount. Now, I also say
that they need something Zelda for this year. Yeah, I feel like that's the easiest option for something last second.
Yeah, and we see in times. This is not the first time where we see someone who we would think would know about something, goes out and says, "No, I've never heard of that before. It's not happening," and then a few weeks later, it's announced. The best example that comes to mind right now, I think, for Banjo-Kazooie, who was it? Was it Grant Kirkhope?
Yeah, it was either that or David Hope.
David Wise.
Or David Wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Grant Kirkhope and David Wise. Yeah, that's.
I'm kind of mixing them up. I think it might have been David Wise.
I think it was David Wise. But I think Grant Kirkhope also commented on it afterwards.
It might have been Grant Kirkhope.
They both talk on Twitter all the time.
One of them.
They both said something.
This is just a passing. We covered this years ago. If you look on my channel in 2018, there's sources on it, and you will know who it is. I'm just not sure which one of the two it was, but One of them did state that they did not hear anything about Banjo-Kazooie coming. They didn't think it was coming to Smash Brothers. Right. A few weeks later, E3 happened. Banjo-Kazooie coming to Smash Brothers. So,
and also, they totally did know because they did music for it as well.
Maybe only one of them did.
They were just lying. But no, I think I mean, like, we don't even know if they're telling the truth. I mean, I think the part about them emailing for Skyward Sword and all that was true. But they could have also been told as well about Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
Or maybe that person on who exactly was it from Tantalus?
The CEO.
Oh, okay. So he would know for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he could have just been lying.
Yeah. He could have been lying. I don't know if he was lying. I think it's possible he just doesn't know. But there are. I mean,
if he's the CEO, how would he not know what's going on in his own company?
CEO of Tantalus, not CEO of Nintendo.
Oh, I just meant like if Tantalus was working on it.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that Tantalus doesn't need to know.
Yeah, if Nintendo's working on it.
Right. So I would say.
I meant he would know if Tantalus was doing it. Like, obviously, because he's the CEO of the company.
Yeah, so I don't think this means Twilight Princess HD is not coming, but it also isn't good news either, necessarily. No. It doesn't mean it is coming. It's really, there's no evidence to suggest so from this situation.
Go either way at this point.
Right, exactly. It can go either way. So we'll see. And I'll stick to this. I think that if Nintendo doesn't announce it this summer, we're not going to see Twilight Princess Moon Waker HD on a modern system for at least a couple of years. So it's either this year or bust,
next year we got Breath of the Wild.
Right, yeah, it's not going to happen then. The earliest it would be 2024 then, in my opinion. But at that point, I mean, it's possible. I think something else that should be noted is that I remember we were talking about Skyward Sword HD happening for years. And it did eventually materialize. Like, Eiji Aonuma came out at a Zelda concert years ago and it was like, hey, Skyward Sword on Switch, right? And then nothing for years. Actually, there were a couple of interviews where it was almost like they deconfirmed that Skyward Sword was coming to Switch, and then all of a sudden it was announced for Switch. So, you know, sometimes these things take time. Not necessarily because it's a huge development project, just, you know, when they want to release it, when they decide to work on it. You know, there's different variables there. But yeah, I wouldn't take this news to mean Twilight Princess HD is not coming, but we also don't know if it is coming yet. But I have a feeling that we'll know by the end of June.
Probably.
Yeah. So let's check in the chat here real quick. Megaton Menace added me. Why does there have to be a Zelda game in 2022? Is it really a big deal Breath of the Wild 2 March is the next Zelda game? I think that's also a good point. What were you going to say, Brandon?
I think Nintendo just wants something every single year. And it's just a long wait. And we only just got Skyward Sword last July. So it'd be like, like a year and a half in between games. Be a bigger gap than even if they just pushed it normally. Yeah,
I think that it's gonna be more than a year and a half. It's almost like a year and 2/3 if there's nothing in between. Nintendo has come out with a major Zelda release every year during the Switch era. It is a goal of theirs. Now, you know, maybe that goal can be somewhat adjusted to where there's just a Zelda game every fiscal year, right? Like, that's kind of a little trick. If you look at it in that way, it's possible, you know. But it is a little weird if they come out with Skyward Sword towards the beginning of a fiscal year and then wait till the end of the next fiscal year to come out with a Zelda game. That is a bit of a gap, right?
Very big gap.
And I think the primary thing about coming out with Zelda every year isn't necessarily for financial reasons. Like, it obviously is, but I think it's more so about keeping the Zelda brand healthy and relevant.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Mario gets something released every year, usually like 2 or more games every single year.
Yeah, so it's really just about keeping the brand healthy. So that's why they strive to have a Zelda every calendar year, because if we're just talking about the awareness of the consumer, right, and the perception and just the brand and popularity, at that point you're thinking calendar year, not so much fiscal. That's just about reporting to the investors and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what they try to do. But is it the end of the world if they don't? I don't think it's the end of the world.
No.
But the whole point behind Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, though. What I was gonna say is that the whole idea behind those two games is that Nintendo's been saving them for when they don't have a Zelda release ready for a calendar year. So if that's the case, this is the time to do it.
Like, why? If you have an easy way of meeting your goal, why not take it? Why would they delay something so easy that in such a this is like the best time to release it too? It would be very strange. I feel like this is the perfect time to release something like that.
Yeah. So we're gonna know this June, basically. I think that we'll know how much Nintendo cares about having the calendar Zelda release, and there you go. Like, it's another example, right? I remember in 2020, the pandemic year, a lot of people were saying that the Zelda release for the calendar year was the physical release of the DLC. Of Cadence of Hyrule, which is an indie game. They came out the year before, and I was like, no, but it's a good game that came out the year prior, and there was just a physical release of it that had the DLC. Yeah, it's an indie game, so a physical release of an indie game that came out the year before that just had additional DLC that had already come out or was coming out around then. A lot of people were arguing that was a Zelda release for the year. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think Nintendo's actually wants to have some sort of big holiday release. And I also feel like there's got to be a Zelda release, which is why at the time I was thinking Breath of the Wild 2. Wrong. But it was still a Zelda release, and it was also still the big holiday game of the year, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which took a lot of people by surprise. So, even in those circumstances, Nintendo still made sure to have a Zelda release ready. So there will be. I think that there's going to be some sort of Zelda something this year, and if not the worst thing in the world, because Breath of the Wild 2 supposedly is coming out this spring, likely this March. Let's see here, Zelda fan for life. Added me. What do you think of Monolith eventually releasing all the Xenoblade games in a collection box? I'd say Xenoblade Chronicles X would probably have to be released first on Switch before then. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of hours. So my thing about Xenoblade games is that you can beat. I mean, if you only go for the main campaign, you can beat them in 50 to 60 hours. But I mean, faster if you're speeding through it, I guess. But reasonably, each game can take you 100 hours. So
I think I got through Xenoblade 2 in 40 or 50 hours.
Yeah, if you count the expansions to Xenoblade 1 and 2...
I literally just ran the story.
If you account for the expansions for 1 and 2, there's no way you don't break 100 for each of those.
Yeah.
Torna is a good 20-30 hours. Future Connected is a good 15 to 20 hours. Right, the tack on to the base games, which are already ridiculously long. And then Xenoblade X is just ginormous. So
Xenoblade X, I had 120 hours. I didn't even finish it.
It's huge. It's so huge. There's so many people that play the game for hours and they don't even experience the main mechanic of the game, which is the mechs. So
yeah, I didn't even beat the main campaign. I never got to the end because I didn't have enough hearts with some character.
I don't remember the details to that extent. I beat the game, but But would they, to go back to the question though, would they put a whole collection together? I mean, my honest opinion is no.
Probably not. I don't see why they would.
Like, could there someday just be like a could there's, well, if there is someday like a Xenoblade anniversary, you know, maybe they put a collection together of all of them, but it would be like a really rare thing. Wouldn't be like I don't think they would expect everyone to buy it. It would be like something that's not really mainstream.
I think they honestly would need a reason, because like even for like a next gen Switch, I imagine, and we're going to talk about this, it's not yet, that Nintendo will want backwards compatibility, so you can just play them on the next one anyways. So maybe like the next Switch, they'll want to do like a remaster of them, but why?
Yeah.
Why release a collection for a niche series already? Like, it's not like it's a super popular series. It's popular enough, but enough for them to just release a collection for no reason? I don't think so. Like,
Yeah.
where's the demand?
And honestly, what I was gonna say is that I feel like if they're gonna do any sort of anniversary celebration, it's gonna be for an individual particular game. That's it. Like that's pretty much it.
Just give us X.
And they do that though, right? Every time there's a Xenoblade game, they make sure to put together some sort of collector's edition. They do provide a great deal of fanfare. So if anything for Xenoblade X, will get its own special edition someday. Maybe if it is for a Xenoblade anniversary, they also have like a discount on the eShop for the other ones, and that's kind of what they do.
I have the Wii U collector's edition.
I'm jelly.
I got the book, and it came with like a mouse pad, I think, or something, or some kind of towel. I forget.
Yeah. So I see we have a super chat here from That Veggie Gamer for $4.99. Thank you very much. There's a little cutesy blue pear mango, I think it's a pear, emoji working out saying keep it up. We will keep it up. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So actually on that note, let's jump into the next topic here. Also shout outs to Nintendo Prime. What's up, buddy? And also thank you to Super Chris and DE Fox for modding the stream. Really appreciate it, guys. So let's go ahead and check some of this financial stuff, because there's a lot. So let me do a bit of a screen share here to show you some of the imagery I'm looking at. And yes, you can't see anything, but you can now. So I'll go ahead and just like start talking about it. Right, so we got an update. Well, there's a number of little things to point out here, but the first thing I'm pointing out is just the sales of the top 10 on Switch. So Mario Kart Deluxe is at 45.33 million. Animal Crossing New Horizons 38.64. Smash Ultimate still has a decent gap between it and Zelda at 28.17, but Zelda is also not that far behind, just about 1.5 million. 26.55, and if you account for Wii U, I think it might be past Smash Ultimate, but that's...
I think it is.
Yeah, so there's that to consider. But Breath of the Wild, just on Switch, is the 4th best-selling game, 26.55. 5th place is not Mario Odyssey, so Mario Odyssey is no longer right behind Breath of the Wild. That might have changed already last quarter, but just pointing it out again here. Pokemon Sword and Shield's at 24.27. Mario Odyssey is at 23.5. Super Mario Party, not the really good Super Mario Party Superstars, which came out more recently, but Super Mario Party, the first one that came out on Switch,
pretty decent game.
It's solid. 17.78 million. This is like here's a real banger here for you. This game came out last November. It's only been out for what, half a year. It's called Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl at 14.65 million.
I like how these were like the least hyped Pokemon games ever, and it still broke into the top 10. Like, well, come on.
So yes and no, right? Because before they were announced, people were like, "Oh, Gen 4 remakes, Gen 4 remakes." Sinnoh confirmed. Sinnoh confirmed. Sinnoh was confirmed, but not in the way we thought it would be. Right. Yet, even despite that, between November and the end of March, right, which was a relatively small window, it's already these games have already placed themselves in the top 10 best-selling games on Switch at 14.65 million, and right behind them is Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee at 14.5, and then right behind that at 14.09, Ring Fit Adventure. So some people do
yes,
like to
Ring Fit
exercise.
Adventure. Ring Fit Adventure is
Yeah.
smash. I really want to get it once I get my Switch OLED.
You know, what's insane here, in the top 10, there are 3 different Pokemon games. 3.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Legends Arceus is not even that far behind. Like, yeah. And then I think Scarlet and Violet might become the best, might be even outperform all of them. So that's just kind of crazy to think of how strong Pokemon sales are. Yet none of them seem to be capable of touching Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, nor Animal Crossing.
What does?
Yeah.
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is in that kind of like, it's in a category of its own. There's very few games that get that high. It's not quite your GTA 5, but it's getting some units. Like for it not being a pack-in title, it is selling insanely well.
Yeah, I wonder if Breath of the Wild will cut the gap between itself and Smash Brothers. I've been wondering that for a while. Can Breath of the Wild enter the top 3, or will it stick to the top 4 or top 5?
I wonder if
Because Sword and
sales
Shield
will
could pass
boost
it.
once the sequel comes out.
Yeah, so I mean, from that perspective, you could argue Breath of the Wild has a lot more going for it because there's still Zelda stuff continually coming out and getting people to try other Zelda things. Well, Smash Brothers is Smash Brothers. Like it should continue to sell as well. But Breath of the Wild should be expected to get a bit of a bump with Breath of the Wild too, especially if they do some sort of like DLC pack-in of the game, a re-release. That's an option to consider.
Yeah.
But let's now look at the hardware sales here, because that also is a really interesting point to get to. So Nintendo Switch is now at 107.65 million, and software's at 822.18 million.
Oh,
that is staggeringly high.
A lot.
That is incredible. And I want to point out something else. Hopefully I have the right image pulled up here. I do. So there's actually a couple interesting things to point out here. So this image, a few things. One, in relation to what I was just talking about, software, they sold 235.07 million. That is the best they've ever done.
It's insane.
In terms of software sales, that is the best they've ever done. It outdoes the prior year by 5 million, basically. Well, maybe closer to 4, because 0.88 versus 0.07. But it's a big difference. Now, going back to more specific games, I was talking about Legends Arceus earlier, right? Legends Arceus came out this January. So between January and March, it sold 12.64 million, which is not that far behind the 14.65 of Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. And they came out in November. These games got to enjoy the Christmas boost, the Thanksgiving boost, the holiday boost. Legends Arceus came out in January. There's no holiday boost there. The anti-holiday boost. Through the anti-holiday boost.
Anti-holiday.
Legends Arceus
you get
is
a little
also
bit of people who have credit cards or like Switch.
Yeah, some
like
gift card stuff.
Gift cards, yeah.
But it also was towards the end of January. It wasn't even at the beginning of January.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to consider. Despite that, this game is also on the cusp of being in the top 10. So then we could be looking at 4 different Pokemon games in the top 10 on Switch, which is crazy. You know,
it's too much. Too
crazy.
I
don't
know. I'm just gonna say this right now. I feel like they don't deserve it. I feel like there are other games that should be there, but whatever.
Let's not get into that.
They're not terrible games.
Let's not get into that, because there's tons of games that are amazing. They don't sell well at all. It's there. While I do think there is a soft, very, very soft correlation between sales and quality, it's not like 1-to-1.
Yeah.
You're
not guaranteed to sell more just because you made a better game. You're not guaranteed to sell less because you made a shittier one.
Sometimes it's just about
marketing and brand name,
and also just the audience that you appeal to, right? So, for example, I would say that Metroid Dread is one of the most polished, well put together games we've seen come out in years. But how many people are into Metroidvania style games? Not nearly as much as people are into Pokemon. And there have been a lot of Pokemon games, and I feel like the quality for them, they're never completely abysmal, but but the level of mastery is not even close to what it could be compared to what was done for Metroid Dread. Yet the sales difference is substantial. It does not mean that Pokemon is better than Metroid. What it does mean, though, is that there are more people who are interested in Pokemon than Metroid. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Right? And some of that could be chalked up to marketing, branding, over time. That's another thing to consider. Remember how we were talking about how Nintendo wants to come out with a Zelda game every year, every calendar year? Why? To build up the brand of Zelda. Think about how strong the brand of Pokemon is. What happens with Pokemon? I'm going to come back to Karen for a little bit just to make this point. The brand of Pokemon, there is at least one Pokemon game that comes out every year. But it's far beyond one Pokemon game. In terms of the mainline games, it's almost every single year. But there are several spin-offs that come out every year. There's at least one movie that comes out every year. There's an anime that comes out every year. There's a trading card game that has several sets that comes out every year. The merchandising for Pokemon destroys anything else Nintendo has to offer. And I'm missing stuff. Like there's so much merchandising. They do special videos and animations for Pokemon all year round. There's always little different things. Like think about how many different things we've seen. Where there's like this cutesy Voltorb, there's this cutesy Pikachu, there's a cutesy that's not a word. Cutesy squirrel. What's the squirrel's name? I wanted to say Centrid, but that's the pre-evolution. It's Centrid is not a squirrel. Centrid is, yes, it looks somewhat like a squirrel, but then it evolves into ferret. Ferret. I don't know.
I honestly don't know.
It's the squirrel.
Squirrelmon.
No, it's the squirrel. There's Bibarel, which is the evolution of the other one.
Oh, Bidoof.
Bidoof. Thank you. What an oof. I oofed on Bidoof.
I didn't realize he was a squirrel. I thought he was like a chipmunk or something.
Maybe he's not a squirrel. You're right. He's a beaver.
A beaver.
He's a beaver. Yeah. Anyway, point is there was an animation for Bidoof. There's an animation for Voltorb. There's an animation for Pikachu. Like, there's a whole bunch. Like they have all these animations. They have the anime series. They have the movies. They have the cards. They have several video games. They have a ridiculous amount of merchandising in so many different ways. Yeah. The branding for Pokemon
Pikachu itself is one of the most recognizable characters in the world.
Oh yeah,
like right up there with Mario.
I think it's more than Mario.
Yeah, I think it is more than Mario. It's like right up there with like Mickey Mouse.
Right.
I think Pokemon is considered to be one of the most recognizable brands of all time.
Yeah, without a doubt. And all of this comes from everything we said, right? So, and then you look at the sales for Pokemon, and we're talking about Legends Arceus with just a couple months, is already going to be in the top 10. It's like 11th or something. And then Brilliant Diamond Shining Pro, which came out just 2 months beforehand, is already in the top 10. So we're gonna have it's just astounding, and this all speaks to having that regular release schedule, keeping the franchise relevant. So you go back to Zelda. Does Nintendo want to have a calendar release Zelda every year? I think they damn do. And I'll even dial this back to Metroid. I've talked about how I believe there's a plan for Metroid. Metroid Dread's just the beginning. I think they want to build upon this. Metroid Prime remake this year. We'll see. Not confirmed. We'll see. But then after that, Metroid Prime 4. What comes out beyond that? Who knows? Maybe they're ready for the next Metroid. Maybe it's a remaster. Something. Spin-off. There's tons of options. Point is, I think Nintendo is trying their best to brand better than ever before. So just keep that in mind. I think Pokemon's the best example of that. But
Pokemon and Mario would be the other one.
Mario, yeah, Nintendo's been doing that for a while too. Absolutely. So, yeah, sales are just ridiculous. It's just astounding how well
great
Nintendo's doing here.
I was watching Digital Foundry's podcast, and I saw they said that there was a metric that apparently out of like the 107 million units that exist, like that have been shipped, 98 million of them were active last year, which is incredibly high. Like, because a lot of times, you'll get a little bit of beefed up sale numbers from like people who have multiple Switches, or people who bought a Switch and it broke or whatever. But no, like 98 million unique Switches were used last year, which is crazy.
That's a very healthy amount. So, and what that means is those 90% those were what connected to the internet. That's how they could tell.
Yeah.
Which means it could be even more, but those people don't go online.
Yeah, could be.
Which speaks to how much people actually use their Switches, which is it speaks volumes. But here we have Kirby in the Forgotten Land, 2.1 in 2 weeks. 2.1 million in 2 weeks. So yes, Kirby is doing really well. I do see it becoming the best-selling Kirby game of all time. It's a very strong start. Obviously,
what is the best-selling Kirby of all time at the moment?
Like 3-ish million or 4. I think once we hit 5, it's not. Let me see. Let's look that up here. So I believe it's one of the first Kirby games. Okay, if you search Kirby sales, the first thing you get is a vacuum cleaner. Which it actually is. What? I'm now wondering, is this vacuum cleaner company what came first? Now on this company it says Kirby made in America for over 100 years.
Oh, probably the vacuum company.
Unless they're lying. Or they rebranded and they weren't always called Kirby. Or did they name Kirby after a vacuum cleaner because of his inhalation abilities?
Maybe. Although you did say it's an American-based company.
So, Mario's named after...
That's true.
The landlord of like a warehouse that had Nintendo cabinets of Donkey Kong and like radar scope or something. So, yeah, a lot of big Nintendo characters or brands have been named after a lot of American things. So, it's not really too crazy. I don't know. That's just a weird thing. It could be a coincidence. There we go. This is what I was looking for. So, Kirby's Dreamland is at 5.13 million.
Okay.
So that's the goal for Kirby in the Forgotten Land. They wanted to surpass that, and apparently it's already over 2.5 million. So 2.65. So it's well on its way. Well on its way. It's in great shape. But I let me kind of check with the chat here, and then we're going to transition over to talking about some of the statements from Nintendo. Hey, Game Over Jesse in the chat. How's it going, buddy? How many chicken nuggets can I eat at once? I'll tell you that I can eat a ridiculous amount of chicken nuggets.
Depends on where I get the chicken nuggets from.
I'll tell you, okay. Alright, I shouldn't say this. I really shouldn't say this, but it's the truth. I got Taco Bell before the show. I know it's not healthy, but I need to get food. And I got food, and I got 4 different burritos, and I ate them all in like 10 minutes. 15.
Nice.
I eat a lot. So
I
but
could
I
easily
also
finish
fast.
20 pack.
I also fast too, like, so there's that. So like, so like I might, like, for the first half of the day or the first 3/4 of the day, I might not eat that much. I might, I might drink water or juice. I might have a fruit or a granola bar or something, or a muffin. I'll keep it light.
I won't eat till like an hour or two after I get up at least.
Yeah, I never eat immediately when I get up either. I always wait. Yeah. Yep. Megaton Menace. Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon game on Switch, so I hope it outsells Sword and Shield. I think it will. Gab Salva, wait, so no Twilight Princess HD. So you missed, you probably missed what we were talking about. Basically, Tantalus, the developer of Twilight Princess HD, has said, CEO of that company has said that they have not been approached by Nintendo to bring it to Switch, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't come to Switch, because it's still a game owned by Nintendo. The game's already done. They might need to get another smaller studio elsewhere, another team elsewhere, or even in-house, just to change out around a few little things and put it together. It doesn't mean it is coming, but it doesn't mean it isn't coming either. It's kind of like, maybe, I don't want to say it's non-news, but it's sort of non-news.
Yeah, the problem is that every argument that can be made for it can also kind of be made against it as well. So, it's just kind of like 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, ultimately the determination is, if it's not announced at this year's Summer Direct, then we don't think it's coming for at least a couple of years. Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah, so... I'm not sure which song you're asking about, Nishquick, but one is a Donkey Kong song. Let me see if I can tell you.
You have just 2 songs on a loop.
Yeah, I know, I should do more, but...
I would think like 5 at the minimum.
No, effort. So, let's get into some Nintendo statements here. Now, I do understand that there was a translation that came out a little bit after some quotes were already discussed by certain venues, including Video Games Chronicle.
Right.
I didn't really take too much issue with the translation difference, mainly because I interpreted it as I believe it should have been, but some people took certain wording and kind of like...
Well, the problem with the translation is less the meaning and more the intensity of the meaning.
It's more like its connotation that people choose to interpret how they choose to interpret. So that's what's strange. I want to see if I can pull up... Alright, so let's see here. What's the first one? Alright, let me see. So I'm on Video Games Chronicle here. They probably updated their article. Let's see.
You would hope.
Maybe they didn't. Alright, so I'm gonna show you the 2 different translations. Okay, so they did release an update. Let me see if I have my own, the original version still pulled up here.
It should still be in the same article.
It's not. Or I just haven't read the whole article because we're busy doing the podcast.
Because usually they'll have like the update, and then below that the original article will still be there, so you can see the context.
Alright, so I'm gonna read you both, okay? So let's see if I can share this so you can see it. No, so that's the new version. I don't want to show you the new version yet. I want to show you the old version. Let me think. Let's see here. I can just read it. I'm just gonna read it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of the best way to portray it, but I would have to like upload on OBS, and I'm brain farting. So anyways, the initial translation that we saw on Video Games Chronicle, which has been adjusted, said this. And Nintendo was asked about how they want to transition to the next generation. The Shuntaro Furukawa, the president of Nintendo, this was his response. Initial translation, and then we'll get to the updated official Nintendo translation. The question of whether we will be able to just as smoothly transition from Nintendo Switch to the next generation of hardware is a major concern for us. Based on our, that's where people kind of like a major concern. Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I speak English, so I'll explain. Based on our experiences with the Wii, that sounded condescending. It somewhat was, but hold on. Based on our experiences with the Wii, Nintendo DS, and other hardware, it is very clear that one of the major obstacles is how to easily transition from one hardware to the next. To help alleviate this risk, we are focusing on building long-term relationships with our customers. While we will continue to launching new software on the Nintendo Switch, we will also provide services that also use Nintendo accounts and other IP outside of the gaming software. We intend for this to help build a lasting impact with our customers. So let's go paragraph by paragraph here. Okay, so the first paragraph talks about there is a question about how they can transition smoothly, and they say it's a major concern for them. So when I read this, I'm not thinking, oh my god, Nintendo's terrified and worried about what they'll be able to do. No, the connotation based off the context is that they are focused on this issue because they understand the importance of it. And they go on to say, based on their experiences with the Wii and the Nintendo DS and other hardware, it's very clear that one of their issues is how they transition, because they have suffered in the past. Right. They have struggled to transition well in the past. So it's a concern for them.
Maintaining hype over to the next generation.
Yeah. But the main point here is that when they say major concern, they don't mean we're not sure we can do this. We are going to screw up.
Yeah.
It's
like it kind of sounds like they're scared almost.
Like,
oh no, what are we going to do?
But that's not what I mean, when I read this, it was no doubt that what was actually meant was we are focused on making sure we transition better than the past. That's their goal. Yeah. It isn't saying that they're scared or actually believe that there's something bad is going to happen.
Right. Okay? I never think Nintendo would ever just say that in general, that they're scared of a transition. Yeah. Like, I don't. Why would Nintendo say that?
Yeah, and let me
even if they were, they wouldn't tell us.
Let me speak to my illusion, or I straight up said that I was being condescending. I was being condescending, but I wasn't being condescending towards people who have struggle reading necessarily. No, entirely. What I was being condescending towards was people who are taking this line, major concern, and bastardizing the meaning through headlines to mislead, to spread negativity, just to get clicks. So, just a personal thing. I mean, obviously, I'm a YouTuber, right? I want people to click on my videos. I want people to see them. So, yes, I'm going to think about how I title a video. I'm going to think about how the thumbnail. I'm going to think about the description. I'm going to think about how I spread it out on social media. I'm going to think about the search engine optimization. I'm going to think about all those things because, yeah, I want to design the video in a way where it will capture an audience. But also, I try to maintain integrity, and that means being sincere and genuine and not misleading people, right? Yeah. Sometimes I might put out something and I'll see some people say, hey, look, this is not what I thought. And I'll be like, huh, was I misleading there? And I really think about it, and I try to make sure I'm as clear as possible. And there's a bit of a tug of war between, you know, being entirely truthful and honest and bringing in views. Like, there is a balance there. Yeah. But there are people who completely forego being sincere, being genuine, being honest, being educational, and they're just like, I want the clicks. So they're just gonna post whatever they can to bring in views, right? They're gonna say things that are intentionally misleading because they know that intentionally misleading statement is gonna bring in more views. Spoiler alert, when you're negative, you get more clicks. That's the truth. Oh, yeah. It may seem sad, it may seem like a terrible truth, but it's a reality. For whatever reason, people are more attracted to negativity.
People are more concerned when things are going wrong than they are appreciative of things going right.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you ever go on to like local news and then all you see is just like plane crash, car crash.
Worst things happening that day.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. Like it's kind of like an innate thing that more people tend to click on that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of people who take advantage of it. So when I was being condescending, I'm being condescending to those people who choose to basically lie to people and mislead them. That's dumb. But anyway, on to the next paragraph here. To help alleviate this risk, we're focusing on building long-term relations with our customers, while we will continue launching new software on the Nintendo Switch, which we will also provide services that also use Nintendo accounts and other IP outside of gaming software. We intend for this to help build a lasting impact with our customers. So basically, it's just about expanding on Nintendo's brand. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Remember how we were talking about how having a Zelda game every year, a plan for Metroid, how there's tons of Pokemon merchandising. It's going further in this direction. Keep in mind, we're getting the Mario movie next year. They're expanding the Nintendo Universal Parks. You know, think about what they've done with Nintendo Labo and the Nintendo Lego collaborations, right? It's all about getting the Nintendo brand out in different places. The mobile games is another venue as well. All of these things are different parts of Nintendo's plan to take advantage of their IP and go beyond the gaming space. Not in a sense where they're trying to do something besides gaming, but it's meant to complement the game.
Pillars of support.
Correct.
It's more marketing than anything else, especially the mobile gaming side of things. It's just getting your brand in front of more faces.
Right.
But there's also something else he said that I thought was interesting, because he specifically mentions the Nintendo account, which I think is actually a very big thing, because before, your accounts would be very much limited to the system. You had your 3DS account, you had like a separate Wii U account. You had a Nintendo account as well, but you also had like separation of the accounts as well. Whereas with Switch, and hopefully for the next Switch, we're kind of hoping that Nintendo moves more in that PlayStation, Xbox kind of situation where your account just goes over, and all those games you have on your account, all the save files you have in your account, everything like that can be transferred seamlessly onto the next Switch.
Yeah,
and I feel like that is going to be a core part of making sure the Switch 2 is successful. Because if you cannot do that, that is going to hurt sales a lot.
Right. So, and it's a great point to bring up as well. Like there is a mention of their services. Like to your point, the Nintendo Switch Online service. If my membership to Nintendo Online Expansion Pack, where I have my Access N64 games and Sega Genesis games and my DLC for Mario Kart, like if that translates all over to my Switch 2, awesome. Yeah. If all my eShop releases are readily available on there as well to download again, right? Or if I just transfer them over through some sort of system transfer from Switch 1 to 2, awesome. Right. Basically, if they have the same exact online infrastructure, obviously I think they should continue to iterate upon it and improve upon it, but the same foundational structure,
account-based system,
right?
Everything being tracked on that. I think that's big. Like,
huge.
I want to be able to transfer my games to the new system just as seamlessly as I do to if I got
an
a
iPhone
Switch OLED versus another Switch. Well, yeah, an iPhone too.
So I think iPhone's honestly the best example. Because
iPhone's good.
iPhones come out every year. There's actually 4 different types of iPhones that come out every year. Usually, that's their current business model. Never mind the earphones and the buds and the watches, and tablets, like,
iPads.
Yeah. But if just the phones, they have 4 different phone models for a generation every year. There's actually more than that, but whatever. It's weird.
There's a lot of variation.
There's variation. But the point is, they get away with this in part because of the incredible branding, the consistent reminder of what this brand is, right? Sounds a lot like we've been talking about, right? But also, their service translates across devices. Yeah, it's the same experience just through the specs of another device.
Right. Everything will work exactly the same as on your old phone. Everything will be there when you get your new phone. All you have to do is transfer it, and it will all work. You won't have to worry about like going in and re-downloading everything, or like transferring your pictures. Like, it all just transfers all together, all seamless. It's all good.
Absolutely.
Especially if you have everything on the cloud, which is gonna be helpful for Nintendo with their saves. Every cloud save should just work. They should just download to my Switch 2 when I download the game, and there should just be a way. Hey, you want to transfer your save files? Yes. Okay. Boom.
So this is how it should go down. I have Okami HD on my Nintendo Switch. I just started it recently. I've played it for about an hour. I know I should have played it more. I started it recently. It's actually kind of hard to like get into, but that's a whole other discussion. Anyway, if I were to buy a Switch 2 tomorrow, hypothetically, because Switch 2 hasn't come out yet, but if I were to, the way it should work, I should be able to log into my Nintendo account, and my cloud save data for Okami HD, and my ability to re-download or transfer should all be there. I should be able to have my exact same Okami HD file without spending a dime, besides what I pay for my Nintendo Online service and Switch 2, on there within
exactly.
moments.
All I should have to do is on my old Switch, remove it from being my main Switch, and on my new Switch, now that's my main Switch, and boom, everything should just work as if it had just always been my main Switch.
Yeah, if
I just transferred to another Switch.
If Nintendo does this,
not a Switch 2,
then they're gonna it's gonna be a much more seamless transition. That's all gonna be completely across the board. Backwards compatibility, I think, also should be a thing. Forwards compatibility, that's where there's maybe some discussion, but that's definitely something else. But before we continue on with this topic, keep in mind, this is the old translation. I haven't given you the actual official translation. So this is the discussion we've had from the old information. Let's see if it differs after we read the new translation. So, let me pull it up here. Let me see, do I already have it up and ready? I do. I'll pull it up for you guys so you can see it, and we can read it together. All right, so this is the Video Games Chronicle article. They already have it, there. So, on the other hand, looking back on past experiences of generational change, such as the change from the Wii, the Nintendo DS eras, we recognize that one of our tasks is ensuring the transition to future generations of hardware is as smooth as possible. To that end, we are focusing on building long-term relations with our consumers through Nintendo accounts. It's literally what we talked about. Yep. But it's just kind of more clear and concise. I feel like
that translation puts even more focus onto the Nintendo account.
Yeah.
Part of that.
They clarified more clearly. While continuing to release new Nintendo Switch software for consumers to enjoy, we aim to maintain relationships across hardware generations through services that utilize Nintendo accounts by providing opportunities for them to experience our IP through other non-gaming channels, which goes to what I was talking about, like the Nintendo Lego, the mobile games, the Universal Park, the movies, merchandising, that. And here they said they're focused on just doing a better job, basically.
Yeah.
Which is so basically our interpretation was 100% spot on to Nintendo's carefully corrected and adjusted translation for the world to see. Because that's exactly what Nintendo intends and wants. So I don't really feel like there's any. I mean, I think we've covered it. Like, that's it. That's what's going on. There's not really. Yeah. That's it. Now, obviously, there's still things to interpret from there, right? Because they're being questioned on their transition to next generation. We are having that discussion already. We just talked about how software sales are at a record high, 235 million. Yes, Nintendo is forecasting a bit of a dip. They have cited the reason for that being related to perhaps hardware issues, but 2020 was a peak year of Switch. How much of this is COVID? How much of this is supply shortages? How much of this is just the natural decline of Switch? Hard to say. But one thing is clear, at this point, Switch is still seeing incredibly healthy sales. It's showing far stronger legs and far better lasting power than any previous home console Nintendo has put out. Well, there was the original NES, but obviously it's outperformed that by this point. But, it was also a different time. It was back in the 80s. There's way more people now. Inflation, all those other things. But in terms of, like, hard numbers, like, Switch is by far is looking to have a much longer, healthier lifespan than, for example, the Nintendo Wii, which also broke 100 million.
Yeah. Because the Nintendo Wii, like, sure, it lasted as long as, like, the PS3 and 360 era, but it was really just limping along for the last, like, 2 years of its life. I mean, like, barely anything came out for it. There was a couple of gems, but overall, like, people really lost interest, what, 2 or 3 years before the Wii U released.
Yep. Yeah, it was sputtering after 2010. Now, there's another interesting statement here that I want to get to, which there may be another translation for which I have not picked up on yet. But let me first get to the chat, see where you guys are at, see if people are still here. And you guys are, which I appreciate. So, Let's see. Let's see here. Zelda. For me, 2024 is the latest we will see next gen, but I'm mostly sure that it's going to come in holiday 2023 with Breath of the Wild 2. Why would they take advantage of the greatest game they made? So, I believe holiday 2023 makes tons of sense for new Switch hardware. I'm with you there. Where I'm a little divided, though, is us having to wait all the way until next holiday for Breath of the Wild 2. It would imply another Breath of the Wild 2 delay. Now, could we see multiple public delays for a Zelda game? Wouldn't be the first time. Happened with Breath of the Wild. So, given that how much we've gotten burned by release date expectation for Breath of the Wild 2, I think it is fair to be prepared for it to get delayed again. I think Nintendo has done that. They've done a stupendous job of disappointing us when it comes to release dates for Breath of the Wild 2. I feel like I'm usually very optimistic about Nintendo, but in this case, they've given us enough reason to be confident about release dates when it comes to Zelda. That said, given that they've given us a more specific release timing of spring 2023, I mean, I still believe it's coming out this spring. But I do sort of pause and think to myself, is it really coming out this spring though? Like there is a little bit of a doubt there, absolutely. But if I still had to bet, if you're gonna twist my arm, I am gonna say that spring 2023 release timing is very likely because it's
for
more
me.
specific.
It's just like they could have just said 2023,
but
they
they
didn't have
chose
to say spring.
Yeah, to me that specificity kind of suggests they have a plan in place already.
Yeah.
Now
Might not have an exact day in mind, but they probably have like the month already picked out, or a couple of months where it could be.
So what's great about what we're talking about right now, though, is it actually transitions perfectly into the next point I want to bring up. Because while we believe Breath of the Wild 2 will probably come out spring 2023, which basically usually means by the end of the fiscal year, so before March is over next year, March 2023, that also opens up the door for something else to come out before the end of the fiscal year. There is a history of Zelda coming out alongside new hardware. Breath of the Wild, Nintendo Switch. Link's Awakening Remake, Switch Lite. Majora's Mask 3D came out alongside new Nintendo 3DS. The Nintendo Wii came out alongside Twilight Princess. Even when they revealed the Wii U, they showed us that Zelda tech demo. So there is a pretty good history of Nintendo releasing new hardware alongside Zelda. And there is this statement, which I didn't pull up the full translation here, but this is coming from Takashi Mochizuki. And basically, the president of Nintendo declined to comment today on when asked whether it plans to release a new Switch hardware this fiscal year. What's fascinating about that is if you go back to last year, when questioned about hardware, he did not deconfirm or decline to comment. And what happened? We got Switch OLED. The year before that, when there was new hardware, in 2020, he said that there were no plans for hardware in 2020. And what happened? Right. There was no hardware in 2020. In other words, we're seeing a track history here where when the president of Nintendo is questioned during this time of the year about new hardware, his response has been telling about whether there'll be new hardware or not. So when he declines to comment, that's not denying new hardware coming. If he didn't come out and say there will be no new hardware this fiscal year, he did not say that. So I think that pretty much means that Nintendo does have a plan for new hardware this year. Now, can that plan get derailed? Yes. Right? So it doesn't mean there for sure will be new hardware, but I am thinking that Nintendo absolutely is trying to get new hardware out this fiscal year. But the question is, what is that hardware, right?
Yes.
Right, so that brings us to the situation regarding spring 2023, March 2023, and Breath of the Wild 2. Given there's a history of Zelda coming out alongside new hardware, and that it was seemingly sort of mysteriously delayed to that point, because let's keep in mind, we also got a leak recently that voice work has been done for Breath of the Wild 2. Voice work is done late into development, usually like right before the game's gonna go gold, like just within a few months at that point. Basically, the fact that we're hearing about voice work being done already, it seems like the game could have been ready for this holiday. There may be more at hand here, but typically you don't hear about voice work getting done this early, unless...
It is strange that they only needed to delay it for a few months. It just sounds like polishing or something unnecessary. It's just strange. Like, is some kind of major bug crop up? Or are they just like, is the performance not where they want it to be? Like, these are kind of the late stage issues I would think they would run into. But it would be strange that if those were the issues, that they wouldn't just do a little more crunch or hire another team to help out to hit the deadline. Like, if you're just having issues that just delay it for a few months, it is strange that they didn't just get somebody else to come in and help.
We've talked about this before, but there's a number of possible variables, right? It could be, you know, there's only so much people they want to hire right before they decide, you know, there's that. Because you want to have a cohesive unit, right? And the more people you have, the harder it is to do that. The harder it is to maintain information and not have leaks come out as well. And again, you want it to be a cohesive team that's all in it together, and there's like a good sort of like state of mind on working on this project. And then there's also
like basic bug fixes, though. That's less of an issue. For like QA and things, you don't really need as much of like people who really know what the Zelda experience is. You just need like the guy who knows how to fix your broken code.
And then maybe they may very well be adding new content there, right? And let's keep in mind that I said a voice actor leak. I mean, is it really a leak? I mean, it's the Italian voice actor for Daruk literally was in an interview and said that he's done voice work for Breath of the Wild too. So maybe there's a translation error, but people have like don't think so. You know, so it's people believe it is a legitimate thing, but
I think so.
You know, it's just technically rumor because we don't know that for a fact, but probably. So it's weird, but you know, maybe they're just shelving it, right? Or maybe they are just polishing it. Maybe they delay it because they just think that they don't need it for this holiday, you know. Maybe there is a core mechanic, or maybe there are certain sections of the game that are entirely done. That's what they have voice work done for, but there's a portion of the game that doesn't even necessarily require voice acting that they're working on, you know, and that's what they're trying to get done. So there's possibilities there that don't necessarily have to mean Nintendo delayed Breath of the Wild 2 purely so it can come out with new hardware spring 2023. But there's a lot of similarities between now and 2016 when Breath of the Wild was delayed to March 2017.
Yeah, so, to be clear, I'm just talking about like ideas and things. I don't think there's gonna be new hardware next like spring. I just don't think so. I don't know. I'm just kind of like going over the possibilities.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be Switch 2. It doesn't even.
I'm just wondering, like, what other hardware would there be, like?
It could be like, for example, a Switch Lite OLED.
I guess, but what we heard, considering it's true, and I do think it's true. I mean, they leaked the fact that we're getting a Switch OLED just in general. Was that those panels were already existent Samsung panels that they were already producing, and they had a lot of extra for them. So that was kind of a big reason why Nintendo did that, because it was kind of a pretty easy, cheap way to come up with a more expensive, high premium Switch. Whereas the Switch Lite, unless there's some other company that's making similar OLED screens at that size first already, that would be like a whole new production line. It's not that it's not possible, it just doesn't fall in line with the reason that seems to be why the Switch OLED exists in the first place. Plus, it kind of having like a premium version of your cheap unit, it can be done. Like we saw the new 2DS, so it's not like there's not a precedent though. So, to play devil's advocate to my own point, they have done premium versions of their cheaper units before. The Switch Lite OLED could happen. I'm just saying it's a little bit of a different situation than the original Switch OLED. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's... the video I put on Friday, I talked about all this stuff, and, you know, I'm kind of divided. Like, you know, on one hand, I think there are signs pointing towards new hardware, and I think they could release it with Breath of the Wild 2. It would be a year and a half removed from Switch OLED, which would be a shorter window than Switch Lite and OLED and base Switch, but also would be kind of par for the course for what we saw in 3DS. But on the other hand, there is a semiconductor shortage, right? We did just get a more expensive OLED model. It would be weird for Nintendo to just Breath of the Wild, just delay Breath of the Wild 2 just for hardware.
Especially
Switch
just
is
for
still performing so
cheaper
well.
hardware too. Like Breath of the Wild does not need to be a showcase. You don't even really need a showcase game for technology, like smaller version of technology you just released last year.
Unless it's something bigger.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna release Breath of the Wild alongside new hardware, it would be for bigger hardware. Because it's not like launching it alongside a Switch Lite OLED would help out the Switch Lite OLED. I'm sure it would, but it just seems very unnecessary.
I feel like if anything is used to launch alongside Switch Lite OLED, it's Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. You know?
I guess. If they want to delay it outside of this year.
I don't know. I hope not. I feel like they really shouldn't, but I don't know.
I don't remember if we discussed it on the podcast, but I believe Jeff Grubb was speculating he thought it would come out in December.
Yeah.
That was just speculation on his part, I think. He didn't say it was a rumor or a leak he heard.
Yeah. So I think we'll probably find out this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going beyond that, well, actually, let's check with the chat here.
Yeah.
So, Joy CJ, I'm not convinced Breath of the Wild 2 isn't already finished. I don't know about new hardware, but I'm wondering if we'll get a snippet of a third Breath of the Wild JMO. Like a third Breath of the Wild trailer.
Yeah, or a third Breath of the Wild game, because we're definitely not getting a teaser for a third Breath of the Wild game anytime soon. I doubt there will even be one. So I don't know if that's what they meant or not, but I'm not sure what they meant.
I'm not 100% certain, but I feel like Joyce is referring more to a third trailer. Because Breath of the Wild 2 hasn't come out yet.
I'm sure we will see a third trailer pretty soon.
A third Breath of the Wild, I mean, we gotta worry about Breath of the Wild 2 first, so, you know.
Yeah.
But I do think another trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 this summer. I think that's a good bet.
I think it's a very likely bet.
Joyce J saying JMO is just my opinion. I understand. Thank you.
Yes. There's just so many different variations of that. Like I'm used to IMO or. You know.
Yeah. Tons of acronyms.
So many acronyms these days.
Yeah. So Joyce J was talking about like a snippet.
Gotcha.
Or a hint that it's a trilogy.
Oh, okay. So they are actually for okay.
But not saying that like we'll get the trailer for Breath of the Wild 3.
Right.
Just that there's a hint that Breath of the Wild 2 could have a continuation. I mean, like we gotta get Breath of the Wild 2 before we can really like
we don't even know what
possibility.
The continuation is really with Breath of the Wild 2, other than the fact that Ganondorf seemingly returns.
And I think some of that depends on success of the game. You know,
I guess. I feel like it more has to do with if Nintendo actually has an idea that will make sense for them. Because even if they, I do think the success of Breath of the Wild was a big reason they did a sequel in the way that they're doing it. But I also think they just had a lot of ideas, and I don't think they would have done it even without how successful it was if they didn't think they had a concept that would work. And so I think it depends mostly, honestly, and this is kind of, I feel like Nintendo's thing in general, that they seem to, their philosophy is like, if it doesn't make sense for them to do something that's like wholly new and like a brand new idea that excites them, then they won't do it, even if they see the sales potential of it. So unless they have like a really good idea for Breath of the Wild 3, I don't think they'll do it. Honestly, I don't want them to. Leave it at the second one. I want a whole new art style, a whole new location, whole new everything.
I don't know. It depends. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's just so hard to say right now. We don't really barely know anything about the second game.
So like, just let me throw this idea out at you, right? We don't know exactly what's gonna happen in Breath of the Wild 2. Could there be a Breath of the Wild 3? I mean, there's gonna be a game that has they're gonna maintain the open air mechanics. Like, that's gonna continue to evolve. But like, how do they make that feel different and new, right? That's gonna be the challenge. But like, what if, for example, what if Breath of the Wild 3? Let's just play with the idea. Let's say there is a Breath of the Wild 3, and when I say Breath of the Wild 3, I don't mean just another Legend of Zelda that has open air gameplay. But what I mean is obviously that, but also it's the same Link and Zelda from Breath of the Wild 1 and 2. Same characters, no reincarnations, just those same characters continuing their lives, seeing what happens next. I think that is possible. By that point, we'll for sure have a game that's made for new hardware, so it'll be much more powerful. And maybe we can see such enough of a visual jump that it's like its own art style. Maybe they even intentionally change the art style somewhat, but still have it semi-similar, so you can still tell it's from the same line of characters.
Right.
And maybe it's nowhere in Hyrule. Maybe it's like on a far-off land, you know? Or maybe it's expanded Hyrule, as we've discussed before. If you look at the map of Zelda 2, the world of Hyrule that we explore in Breath of the Wild is just a small quadrant in Zelda 2. So, you know, there's technically, from a canon perspective, far more Hyrule out there. So, you know, they can expand in that direction if they choose and have an entirely separate story. You know, it does depend. Like, for example, you look at the Wind Waker, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen with the Wind Waker until you play the game, right? But at the end of the Wind Waker, it does set itself up for a sequel, which we do get in Phantom Hourglass. And in Phantom Hourglass, what happens is they find a whole new land. Yeah. Well, eventually, which is
eventually at the end of the very end of the game.
Yeah, we see it in Spirit Tracks. But the point is that there is like that kind of story, right? Like, heck, what they could do, like, what if they make Breath of the Wild 3 and it's like a spiritual successor to the Wind Waker, because they are traveling to a new land to get away from the calamity.
I would like that.
You know,
if they took it, but for me that wouldn't really be a Breath of the Wild trilogy in the same sense that it is in my head. I don't know. Just like in the same way that the current sequel is a sequel, the third game would be very much different. I would hope. I want it, like, if it has the same Link and Zelda, and that's great, and they're traveling the land's great. I just don't want the same map. Like, even if it's expanded, and I'm like, no, I don't want to explore Hyrule for a third time, no matter how much you change it. I want a whole new place. Because even if you expand it, like, I don't want to re-explore the initial location again. And I do feel like there is a point where a game could be too big. Like, I don't know, like, I don't want them to feel like the third game needs to be, like, 3 times the size of the map of Breath of the Wild. Honestly, they can come up with a whole new map that's the same size or thereabouts, maybe a little bigger, and be fine. Like, I don't like the concept that a lot, and this is kind of a tangent that I'm going on, but I don't like the concept a lot of times, the kind of like Ubisoft-ification of games these days, where they just get big for the sake of being big and having more content, just for the sake of having more content. I don't want Zelda to ever turn into that.
I hear you there. You know, another idea for how they could progress the story for Breath of the Wild beyond 2 is, say Link, the time stuff gets real messy. Basically, here's the point. Breath of the Wild 3, if you want there to be a Breath of the Wild 3, Link and Zelda need to fail. Like, they need to not succeed in beating Ganondorf. Like, Ganondorf needs to win, or much. Like, it needs to be like a draw. Like, he just destroys Hyrule, and they gotta move forward. Or maybe, like, they defeat Ganondorf once and for all, but in order to do it, they have to, like, lock themselves in a time chamber forever, right? But not actually forever, which brings me to my alternative idea for a third game in the series. Link and Zelda wake up in a new time. they've already proven themselves to wake up in new times, given, well, Breath of the Wild. They both were in some sort of slumber or stasis for 100 years. Zelda was, fighting Ganon, and Link was getting resurrected. But this time, it's far more into the future. It's like thousands of years into the future. And it's a futuristic Zelda. Or like a steampunk kind of Zelda. One or the other or both.
Very nice.
And it's an entirely new departure.
But with Spirit Tracks. A little bit of steampunk.
But imagine like actually like full on, and then, it could be a third game, but visually it'll look completely different, right? It'll be an entirely new take on the world, and they could do something new with that. Like that's another possibility.
Because I think Zelda technology could be cool while still being like very medieval and interesting at the same time. Like, imagine Hyrule where, obviously, it wouldn't look like a modern city. I don't want, like, Link running around in, like, New York or something. That'd be horrible. Or something that resembles New York. But imagine if the technology from, like, the ancient Sheikah technology and stuff, imagine if they just figured out how to use that for everything. That would be awesome. And they just build whole cities based off of Sheikah tech and tech that fits within the Zelda universe and looks appropriate. But
Other
it's still
idea.
Modern.
Other idea. Instead of them going out to sea to finding other parts of Hyrule, instead of them being locked into some sort of space-time and going far into the future where it's a futuristic world, they get blasted off into space. Or like they get abducted and they go to an alien world, which is the root of the Sheikah, thus proving Sheikah are actually ancient aliens. And it's an entire alien world, and that's what they have to explore, and that's where the next Breath of the Wild takes place. So
I feel like if either of them are, if any like group of people in Zelda is gonna be aliens, it'd be the Zonai. The Zonai seem like they were aliens. Or they could have been aliens, or they could have been at least influenced by.
Sheikah felt like aliens to me. But we'll maybe if we see more of the Zonai, we'll see. Zonai, honestly, to me, feel just more like people of Hyrule. Like the Sheikah technology is like super futuristic. Maybe. Zonai is like magical. In theory. Fourth idea for Breath of the Wild 2 sequel, Breath of the Wild 3. Instead of it being on another planet, instead of it being in the future, instead of it being in the sea, what if it's in an alternate realm?
Going with alternate realm now?
Yeah. They get thrown into the Twilight Zone.
It would be cool to have a whole, or a game that explored the Twilight Zone more. Because you really only explore one tiny area.
They were the Twilight, but I don't think it's called the Twilight Zone because that's a show.
I believe it was called the Twilight Realm.
Yeah, Twilight Realm. Maybe that makes sense. Yeah. So that's
you only go there once in Twilight Princess. And it's just for one.
There's a whole dungeon there, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But it would have been cool to
it did make me wonder though, because it's supposed to be like an alternate form of Hyrule. Like, what's the rest of it like? Now you could argue that when you were in Hyrule and there was those Twilight areas that were consumed by the those are perhaps like what they were in the other part. So you did sort of get to explore them, and they were just basically alternate versions of Hyrule that were basically the same, just with different light. Maybe. But I would want it to be just
unique locations as well.
I would want it to be like an entirely different world. Not like a mirror. Like, maybe there are some similarities, right? But it would have to be an entirely different world. But I mean, if you want me to tell you what I think is going to happen, I think Breath of the Wild 2 is the last of its storyline.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. We don't know what they're planning for Breath of the Wild 2. Once we play it, my opinion may change on that.
Yeah. Shout
out to Rule 2 Review. How you doing, Rob? Another awesome YouTuber. Make sure to check him out, guys. Rule 2 Review. Talks about Nintendo all the time. So, I don't know if we probably got derailed. Well, we were talking about next generation Nintendo stuff, but we kind of covered it. Talking about potential maybe not ever third Breath of the Wild games set off in entirely different worlds or realms or universes is pretty interesting. So, you know, I'm cool with that. Actually, on the note of alternate realms and universes, so where did I talk about this? I think it might have been the Q&A last week. We talked about the premise of this Ganondorf being the final true fight. Like, this is I didn't focus on this part of it, but it was alluded to. This is the final true fight with Ganondorf, where we finally take him down, end him for good. But in order to do that, we need to be stronger than ever before, because this Ganondorf is also stronger than ever before. This is Ganondorf's final form. By the way, I'm not saying what we see in the trailer is Ganondorf's final form, because I think there could be a true Ganon afterwards. Like, I think Ganondorf could transform into a proper Ganon battle, not a phantom walrus pig that doesn't move. But anyway, point is, they need to reforge the Master Sword, get it to be stronger than before, because Ganon just completely obliterated the sword more so than ever before. Right, so not only does the sword have to be fixed, it probably needs to be made stronger than ever before. And Link may need to be stronger than ever before as well to beat the strongest version of Ganondorf we've ever seen. And perhaps this time, not just for a while, but for good. Because look what happens when you don't beat him for good. He comes back and he becomes just a recurring, like, climactic evil destruction for everything.
It would be cool to, like, end Ganondorf, because, like, as we've pointed out a couple different times on the podcast, that's the same Ganondorf it's always been. It's the same guy. It's always been the same guy.
That same guy.
It would be, like, we've had other villains like Vadi before, but when it's Ganondorf, it's Ganondorf. It's the same exact dude. So it would be interesting to, like, put him away for good and get, like, another form of reincarnation of that spirit of evil or whatever, you know?
Yeah,
that spirit of demise.
And of course, you want to see Ganondorf again, you go back in time, right? Like, you can do so much with the Zelda series. There are different timelines. You know, it doesn't have to be the final time we see Ganondorf, but this incarnation of demise, or his spirit, I think this could be the final end. Like, this is the same I think a lot of people, there's some debate here, but I don't think most people actually debate this. This Ganondorf is the same Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time, which is also the same Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, which is also the same Ganondorf in The Wind Waker, even though they're in different timelines. They're just branching paths. Right. This Ganondorf does not die. This time you make him die for good. Clean him out. But in order to do that, you gotta get stronger than before. So, circling back to what I was talking about, what if, in order for Link to become stronger, he has to learn from different heroes? In come Hero Shade, right? So I actually had a theory that the green hand could be a previous hero that's guiding Link. So, you know, who's going to teach Link how to beat Ganondorf? Previous heroes who beat Ganondorf. Previous Links. So what if there is some time nonsense here, or even, like, space-time nonsense here, and we interact with other Links from other realms, or parallel universes, or timelines. Just periods.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool, right? Like, I don't even know if I would call this a theory yet. I'm just acknowledging it as a possibility.
Do we have the Spider-Man No Way Home of
Breath of Zelda?
Breath of Zelda?
Yeah. What if? It would be pretty neat. And, like, Link could learn a whole bunch of cool combat techniques, too. You know? And there also be flashbacks in that way. It would answer to the flashbacks of Daruk's ancestor. How do you get Daruk's ancestor in an actual cutscene? Well, you see a flashback of another hero. And the only way they would do that is because Link is communicating with other heroes to get stronger. Or build it up for, you know, fix the Master Sword. Something to that effect.
Right. I think that would be cool. Yeah. I think I brought this up before for when we were last talking about Daruk's voice actor. I definitely think there's going to be some flashbacks to the old hero, the original hero who first sealed the calamity 10,000 years ago or whatever. I do think we'll see more about who that was. and I do like the idea that he could be guiding you. I think that's a good expansion of that idea.
Yeah. So I want to address Having Hope 5. So Having Hope 5 is saying Ganon will always come back in the Zelda game reincarnated, of course, like Zelda and Link. Because of Demise's curse, I don't think it will ever end. And I 100%...
It doesn't have to be Ganondorf, though.
Right. So to clarify my initial sort of statement, it isn't that I agree with what you're saying. Like, there will always be something from Demise, right? It may even still be called Ganondorf or Ganon, but the current Ganondorf we're going to be facing in Breath of the Wild 2 is still the same Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time. This dude will not die. It's time to freaking kill him. It's time to actually beat him. Not steal him away for 100 years or a couple hundred years, or turn him to stone so somehow he just becomes a stone Ganon and still is alive. Like, no, that's not a thing. But it could become a thing, though. Anyway, point is, finish him for actual good. And if he's gonna come back, he's gonna come back as an actual different person. So, you know.
Well, that have
be
seen
interesting to see.
The death of the Wind Waker arc of Ganondorf, the Wind Waker timeline.
You presume he's dead.
Yeah.
Just encased in stone.
He turns to stone, it seems, or at least encased.
And he seems crushed, dead. And he's crushed in like leagues of ocean water, along with Hyrule, right, supposedly.
He seems very dead. So maybe this is the time with the Twilight Princess side of the timeline will get got.
I don't know. If you're asking me, I think that Wind Waker Ganon is still alive.
Could be. Maybe they just haven't done anything.
And he's basically like Malice, just building up under the sea. And it's like this ancient dark evil deep under sea of this destroyed civilization from many, many, many generations ago. And then one day there's just a sea town. And there you go. And actually this
Breath of the Wild Sea Edition.
No, this is Breath of the Wild 3, right? So they think they beat Ganondorf, but because there's some sort of weird space-time event, the different futures sort of connect. So one Ganondorf is defeated, but Ganondorf is still alive because the whole Malice event's occurring again, but through Wind Waker Ganondorf deep under the sea, and it's like this ancient dark evil, but you don't quite know. Yeah, that would be a total ass pull. But
they just make the timelines actually merge, and that's the reason for all the discrepancy.
That is literally the only way it would make sense. That's the only way it would make sense. But I'll throw this idea out at you.
So there's actually two Ganondorfs in existence at one time.
I'm gonna throw this idea out. Okay, so imagine another Zelda game in the future, not in a continuation of Breath of the Wild, just another Zelda game in the future, where Ganondorf was killed and murdered off. Like, he's done, right? Like that let's say Breath of the Wild 2, finish him off, right? And maybe it is even like a sequel to Breath of the Wild 2, but it's a new art style, new timeline, or new generation, like, you know, new characters, but it is in the future after Breath of the Wild 2.
Kind of like Spirit Tracks.
Kind of like Spirit Tracks, or like maybe like kind of like Twilight Princess. Even though Twilight Princess, the same Ganondorf gets over, but you know. But in this time, there is a Gerudo, a male Gerudo that's born, right? And you're Link, and you're like friends, rivals. But he's, if you know the history of Zelda, he'll be sort of suggested to become the next Demon King, right? Like, that's kind of like his future. So this is like this story, like, you see him as a good guy, but there's a rivalry, you're building up together, and you're in fear that he's gonna become evil. And there would be some sort of evil forces building up to his fighting for this, and you think he's a good guy, but ultimately maybe he becomes a bad guy, or maybe it's someone else.
Maybe he gets possessed. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's not born with the spirit of evil. He gets possessed with the spirit of evil.
Perhaps. Or maybe they do like a curveball and it's someone else at the end, right? Someone else that you think is good and turns out not to be. And they just throw us for a loop, you know? And they can mess with us that way with the story. Like, they have that potential. You know, maybe actually what happens is this Ganondorf guy is actually a cool dude, and he just freaking dies. Like, he just gets brutally murdered. Or maybe he sacrifices himself. Basically, I'm asking for Groose 2.0, but with higher stakes. Because legit, when I was playing Skyward Sword, I 100% believed that Groose was going to get possessed by the Spirit of Demise, and he would become the next Ganondorf. Because we have plenty of signs to suggest that he is like the initial Gerudo. He has yellow eyes, like all the Gerudo. He has red hair, like all the Gerudo. And I believe he just fly off to the direction of the desert, implying that he starts off a line of people there, and they become that. Not to mention that there was a trio in Skyward Sword. Link, Zelda, Groose.
Right.
In all other Zelda games, it's Link, Zelda, Ganondorf. So, I think there's something there. But, we won't know until it confirms.
Yeah. Be a cool idea, though. I feel like that's a little too anime of a story for Zelda, though. A little too wacky. A little too campy, maybe. I'm not sure.
It depends how they do it.
Yeah.
Depends. So, there's a couple more things here in the chat, and then we'll call it a night. D. Fox added me, Demise is the most badass Zelda villain of all time. He was very similar to Akuma from the movie Street Fighter Alpha. Him coming back would have me hyped. I have seen that character, and I do see the similarity from a design perspective. Joycey J, higher up, said, I still think Demise himself will come back. There's your third game. That would be interesting.
Good.
Nintendo Academy. I have a source who states Demise is the final guy here. So you guys could be right, but the hand is actually Fi acting as a Sheikah Slate, giving him abilities.
I feel like if it was Fi, the hand would have been blue. I like the idea of it being Link because it's green, so obviously the Triforce of Courage. But then you also have the fact that, well, Link was the one 10,000 years ago who originally sealed Calamity Ganon. So it makes sense that if he was the one who put Ganondorf there, it would be him.
And it also doesn't have to be a Link from a Zelda game you played. It could just be a Zonai warrior who may not even necessarily have been a Link, but had like a similar sort of goal of being the hero. Maybe, and it may not even be specifically stated if he had the spirit of the hero or not. Maybe he does. Maybe it's kind of left for us to decide.
Yeah, maybe I could see him being a Zonai with the spirit of the hero who's not necessarily Link. Because you see in the tapestry somebody with red hair. Clearly not Link. Like, looks like Link.
I always just kind of chalk that up to just
Link.
Abstract design. And didn't really think much on it.
But a lot of people have...
I will say, though, if you do pay careful, close attention to the tapestry, there are some things on the arm that do seem somewhat reminiscent of the Zonai hand. We're calling it a Zonai hand. We don't know if it's really Zonai, but it might be. Yeah. Maybe. There's a few possibilities there. Maybe that is good boy Ganondorf and he becomes evil. Yeah, like the tapestry is a good guy. Gerudo who becomes bad. Yeah. I really don't want to believe that, but we'll see.
I don't think so either.
I got another at here from Joycey J. Nah, Demise will be smarter. If Gerudo again is fully gone, the next evil king is coming back as a Hylian. So this goes back to my idea, though. In a new time, there's this new Gerudo kid, and he's your friend, and you think he's cool, but everyone's like, nah, you're gonna become a bad guy. And then meanwhile, this is other dickwad, who's a Hylian, who thinks everything's great, and then...
Turns out the king of Hyrule himself's evil.
Yeah, what if he... Yeah, and you think he's great, but he's not. And that would be a pretty cool twist. Like, and you think this whole time that Hyrule is, like, great, Hylians are great, and in actuality, maybe the people are great, but the background's been evil this whole time. So there's this whole political problem, which from a story perspective would be something we haven't really seen much from Zelda before. So there could be some serious complications there, but it could be captivating. So, we'll see. Super Chris just said, Andres, hello there, Chris, how are you? That Veggie Gamer, that would be cool if there was a female hero. Yeah, no, for sure. Like, what if Zelda had a more active role, right? What if Sheik was brought back, but in a modern time, and it did her own crazy stuff? What if, in this world we're talking about, where maybe the king of Hyrule is Ganondorf, or has the Spear of Demise, I should say, right? So Zelda actually has to play more espionage and do a lot of like stuff on the background, be a ninja, chic, you know, that could be really cool. I would love to see that. Yeah, Joycey J, Nintendo should hire us because there's a lot of story ideas here. Gears of War Phoenix Edition. I thought Ganondorf died in Twilight Princess though. So did we. But so keep this in mind. The Master Sword went into Ganondorf's chest, right? Or like the torso, around the sternum area. Where is all the malice emanating from in the trailer for Breath of the Wild 2?
From his chest. From a hole. They gave it a hole.
From his chest.
They gave it sword wound.
Exactly. And also keep in mind, the story of Calamity Ganon is Ganondorf giving up on a physical form in order to continually still attack Hyrule after multiple failings. So it's still supposed to be Ganondorf who has failed multiple times. Also, in every 3D Zelda, it's been the same Ganondorf. There is another reincarnation of Ganondorf in one of the Four Swords games, but even in that Four Swords game, the spirit of the original Ganondorf is also in there too. So,
we never really see what happens to him after Twilight Princess. Like, do they just leave him in the field? Maybe after that, they actually move him underneath the castle for some reason, and then seal him away there, just so he doesn't like return. But it ends up like the mouse leaks out anyways.
Yeah. Also in Twilight Princess, we do already see Ganondorf starting to take on more of an essence. Like we see like the malice, like that they use that terminology malice in Twilight Princess, and he even has like this like spiritual evil yellow face form. So like Ganondorf is already evolving in Twilight Princess and like showing signs of what he could become in Breath of the Wild. So yeah, that's what I think it is.
You know, it would be cool if that hand is actually Twilight Princess Link, because in Twilight Princess we see him get advice from the
Hero Shade.
Hero Shade, yep, which is Ocarina of Time Link. So it would be interesting if Twilight Princess Link actually came back to help out Breath of the Wild Link.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. My only problem with the Hero Shade is there's this implication that Link died in battle and didn't live like a happily ever after with a family and peacefully and joyously. Right. But if we do some mental gymnastics, you could think that yes, Link lived his life as a warrior, but still lived happily ever after, never actually died in battle, but when passes away, opts to have his spirit linger around for the time to teach the next Link as a Hero Shade, and then once that's done, he moves on. But he still lived a happy life in his current life. Mental gymnastics. So, you know.
There's definitely ways that they could explain it. Just because it was the Hero Shade for that reason doesn't mean that can't be a reason that Link could do a different. You know what I'm trying to say? There's not a different reason. There's no reason that there can't be another reason. Why was that so hard to say?
I don't know, but also it wouldn't be the first time we've seen tragedy in Zelda. Like actually, a lot of times we speak to sages who were dead and they died, not having gone to live a whole full
played Majora's
life.
Mask. A lot of people just straight up died.
Yeah, but even beyond Majora's Mask, look at the Wind Waker, for example. The sages are dead.
Yep.
The previous sages, you know. So
King of Hyrule's freaking maybe I shouldn't say. Maybe if Wind Waker gets ported to the Switch, some people want to play it. But I won't say.
I kind of want to play it. I miss both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So we could go on and on about theories. I'll read one more and then I'll call it a night. Zelda fan for life. I'll bring it up again. Imagine if the curse gets so bad you'd have to time trial to maintain it with multiple endings depending on how you played. Oh god, that would be
multiple endings. Oh god.
I'm okay with extended endings, but I don't know how I feel about alternative endings. That throws me for a loop. Yeah, Actually, I'll read this one last thing from JCJ. Y'all, what if our Ocarina of Time Link came back to beat the heck out of Ganon? My theories make me happy. Hype responsibly. Well, to Brandon's point, you know, and my point, because I did theorize at the hand, it could be a hero. Like, what if it is Ocarina of Time Link that backs you up, you know? Or Twilight Princess Link, right? Because Ocarina of Time Link was a hero shade. Or it's a whole bunch of different links. But anyway, yeah. And actually, one last thing that I do agree with Megaton Menace here, I believe. Megaton Menace says, I think Breath of the Wild 2 will be simple enough that people who just played Breath of the Wild can understand. Yes, I don't think Nintendo's gonna... Like, I think there'll be a lot to interpret and theorize on, but I think the base story will be easy for people to pick up and progress and enjoy.
Yeah.
For sure. We may not even need to have played Breath of the Wild 1 for that. So, yeah.
Zelda stories are never anything too complicated.
Yeah.
Nothing that's gonna, like, make the average person too confused about what's going on.
Yeah. But that's all for now. We got places to be, sleep to be had, snacks to snack on before to go to bed. But have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you all really soon. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Cool.